what, would make school somewhat, or current normal schooling, somewhat useless or behind?
We're wasting a lot of time teaching kids to outsource their thoughts. Well, school would say, cool, then here's this book, here's this multiple choice test, watch this video, you're gonna do a trifold board, and somebody's gonna come by, and as long as you follow the rubric, you're gonna do it, and then they're gonna tell you, great, you know jujitsu. Whereas the real world says, go get on the mat. What I don't like about conventional school even more are the habits that are built. It's the sneaky habits that are built. You're spending your time being trained to a bell. You're spending time being trained that anybody who claims authority is somebody you have to be blindly obedient to, and you just got to kind of play their game.
What do they learn? I mean, what's school look like for a 5-year-old at Acton?
At 5, play is how they learn. And then they start to learn rules of engagement on conversation, so social, emotional. And really that play-based kind of mentality should go up through about 7 or 8 years old. And you can finish all 12 years of the, full-on curriculum in middle school.
One of the things I really liked about your message is when you talk about discipline, you talk about how if you show kids that it's an opportunity to have discipline, then you don't have to necessarily discipline them.
That's right. You just make it, you normalize what you normalize.
I don't think that kids have to be spanked.
Yeah.
That's a very American sentiment, but I think it's true. But how can somebody who has gone through that,
they gotta retrain the brain. 100%, man. So and again, I was whooped too. For sure.
Well, I guess it's been happening for years now, but the last several months there's been more school shootings and things like that. What are some of your thoughts on that? Like, where do you think, some of these things are kind of coming from?
What I don't love about video games is that it desensitizes them to life, especially our young guys.
But in terms of college, like, what's the minimum effective dosage of it? Like, how much do you need?
So what I asked a group of college professors that I was speaking to, students that come to your class, what do they get from you that they can't get anywhere else? Like, it's worth paying that money because they have to come to you. Otherwise, they're not going to get it anywhere else. They can't go to any other school, or they can't go online and get it, maybe even for free. They need the degree. Some jobs want it. That was the overall consensus.
Right. Power Project family, how's it going? Now, on this podcast, we talk a lot about getting great sleep. We've done countless podcasts on it. We almost talk about sleep every single podcast because of how important it is for your recovery, for your fat loss, for your muscle gain, all of that good stuff. That's why we've partnered with 8 Sleep mattresses. Now, 8 Sleep mattress has something called the Pod Pro cover, which you can place upon your own mattress or one of 8 Sleep mattresses. And the cool thing about the Pod Pro cover is that it has dynamic cooling and heating through the night. Now, your body's circadian rhythm and your body's temperature changes through the night, and the mattress cover or the Pod Pro cover changes in accordance to that so that you get the best sleep of your life. Some people like myself sweat when we sleep. I sometimes have woken up in puddles and I thought I pissed myself. But because of the Pod Pro cover, it regulates my temperature through the night so I wake up feeling refreshed and dry. And that's also great for my partner. Anyway, Andrew, how can people get a hold of the Pod Pro cover?
Yes, you guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject. That's EIGHT sleep/powerproject. And you guys will automatically receive $150 off the Pod Pro cover or the Pod Pro cover and mattress combo. Again, that's at 8sleep.com/powerproject. No code needed. You guys will see a banner across the top saying that you're going to receive $150 off your order. Again, so no code for that. Just head over to that link ASAP. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Fun.
It was worth it.
I'm down for fun.
No, great. Jake used to come home from school and tell me just some wacky stuff that you would do.
I have no doubt.
I was like, he's doing that to get you guys to loosen up a bit.
Totally.
Right?
Man, and I can't tell you, I got so pumped when Jake wanted to we started writing the script for it was kind of like The Office.
Ooh.
But for school, right? And so playing up all the different stereotypes, having me be the, the vastly inappropriate, school leader that's, making comments to the girls and comments to the boys too, and doing and it was brilliant.
Just always being a little weird.
Just always being super weird and making everybody else way uncomfortable. It's brilliant, man.
You're
so
Jake, what are you seeing? What are you seeing in me that you're writing?
Yeah. Why am I the first character you thought of with this whole project? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny, man.
It's great to have you on the show today. I had a chance to watch you speak at that event that you invited me to. That was amazing. And getting to be around Beaudreau and some of those other guys is always a great opportunity.
It's fun.
Are you kind of starting up like maybe not starting up. It looks like you kind of already have like a network of people that come and speak at some of these schools that you have been developing and working on for a while?
Yeah, it's cool, man, seeing all of how these things come together. And before I even say that, I want to, you rocked it on the stage.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Which was cool. So, I mean, I get, my whole career outside of education has been speaking. And so I see a lot.
I got the
speak.
the candy cane hook,
dude,
because I was up there forever and I wasn't really scheduled.
That's so funny.
I wasn't really scheduled to go, and it's like 5 minutes, and it's like blinking, which I guess means like you should get off the stage. And then the next one came, and it's like wrap it up.
That's so funny. But you did so well, man.
Oh, thank you.
You really did. Couldn't have had somebody kick it off better, but. Yeah, man. We so that whole group of guys, Ryan Mickler had been contacted by somebody in his Iron Council, and the gentleman was actually there at the event. His name's Bear Kingery, and so shout out to him. And Bear was like, hey, I want to put together kind of this group of men that are speaking to different components of masculinity. And I really want to put a bunch of these speaking things together. And if we can go towards schools, if we can do these live events, whatever that looks like, who should be involved in that? And so Ryan was gracious enough to ask me, and we kind of said, who else? And so, of course, Beaudreau made a whole lot of sense. And, and Ray and Ryan and John Lovell and all those guys, Stephen Mansfield, and Jack Donovan, Tanner Guzzi, all those guys that were there. And so that was just kind of the first. So he sent all of us to Mexico last December, and we just kind of powwowed and said, where do we want to go with this? And so that was event one, and we got a lot more things coming. So it's fun, man.
One of the big reasons I invited you back on the show, and there's like a lot to get to, because I think that so much of what you teach seems to always come back to, or oftentimes comes back to personal responsibility.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of it comes back to parenting. But then we end up in these weird situations where there's a lot of children that just don't have parents that maybe care. There's some kids that literally kind of don't have parents.
Yes,
there's kids that need to be adopted, and there's there's so many different factors in all of this. But I agree with a lot of the stuff that you say. So I'm like, man, I want to bring him back on the show, and I'd love to have you communicate some of these family values that you found to be super beneficial for you, and have also extended out to be very beneficial to a lot of other folks.
Yeah, man. No, it's a pleasure. You're right. And I wish I had the ability to fix all of that, and I don't know. I don't know the answers, because people, in health and fitness, you'll get so many people that'll just come to you and go, hey, and what do I do? And it's like a nuanced kind of deal. And there's certain tenets though, right? That, for physical health, there are certain tenets that, look, I don't know your unique situation, but here's what I found to kind of work for most people most of the time. And I think from the parenting standpoint, it's that same thing. If we can get people to kind of start having those conversations and be intentional about it, And, my son, just so people have some context, my son went to Acton Academy, and he really enjoyed it a lot, his time there. Yeah.
And he made a decision his senior year. He wanted to go back to Davis High School with his friends and stuff like that, which made some sense. But he got to go to school at a time when a lot of other schools were shut down. And I think I've asked him recently, if he thinks that's a transformative part of his life, but I asked him way too early. He was like, I don't know. Yeah, he's a kid, so he's like, I don't know. He kind of didn't care. But I think he'll look back on it, and I think it will be a transformative part of his life. What is something that makes your school different? And also, when you were speaking, I was not really surprised, but I thought it was interesting how you were talking about unconventional education, but you were also mentioning homeschooling.
Yeah.
Almost don't even come to my school.
Yeah.
Do it at home.
Sure.
And then parents have this knee-jerk reaction of oh, well, I can't do that.
Yeah, of course.
And it's if you're not going to teach your kids, then whose responsibility are you going to shove that off to? And I was like, wow, that's really powerful.
That
sounds incredible.
Right? It's the primary deal. And so people confused, because I'm very, very passionate, obviously, about young people, about education in particular, because that is your foundation. I'm very passionate. I talked in that speech about the fact that we spend a lot of time trying to fix so many broken human beings, and we're trying to fix them as adults. Well, it only makes sense to start at the beginning, right? And create an ultra strong foundation that you just can't break in the first place. Like, it just makes sense to me to do that. Obviously, it's nuanced. There's so many other factors. So, if that's going to be the case, I want people to make informed decisions on what they're doing. And I really don't believe there's anybody that's going to be more impactful than the parents. And if the parents can keep the kids home and teach them, why would you not do that? Like, why would you not pour in all of that? You are the most qualified. You hear that a lot. I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified to teach my kids, right? And I always say the irony of that is parents feel like they're not qualified, and they went through a conveyor belt school system. And so then they turn around and put their kids back in the same system that left them feeling unqualified to teach their own kids, right? The irony of that statement. And I just think that's the toehold that the religion of conveyor belt schooling has on everybody. And I just think that's such a dangerous deal. So if you can homeschool and you can make that work, man, do it. And I love Acton, and I think Acton's got a phenomenal place, and it's a phenomenal option. At the end of the day, I'm for sovereignty of parents to reclaim that sovereignty for themselves, so they're not so that they're leading by example, but then sovereignty over the family and having those decisions and really just being intentional about it. School it's an afterthought for people, and it's such a formative amount of time during the most formative years of their life. That should be so freaking intentional. So, I want parents to realize there's options and then to choose what makes the most sense.
I'm curious, what would make school somewhat, or current normal schooling, somewhat useless or behind? What aspects of it are behind? Because when I look back to when I was in school, so many things I don't use, like so many things I don't use. And I think about it sometimes. I'm like, well, even though I don't use it and I learned it, is it still beneficial that I did learn this at this point in time? Or I feel like it probably would have been more beneficial for me to learn true life things, because it took me in my adulthood years learning and reading personal development books and developing that side of being creative to do more creative things. Right. So where is normal school failing people, and where does Acton and even homeschooling in the way you're talking about, where does it fill those gaps to allow kids to work in modern society, or actually work ahead in modern society?
Yeah, or actually work on something that transfers into what modern society values, right? Yeah. Modern society values competence. It values the ability to communicate. It values the ability to be resilient. It values mastery. It values those things. The thought that we get that by everybody doing the same thing, same time on this very narrow scope of academia, and that is transferable, it's provably false, right? So it's not just the curriculum side of that. Like you said, you kind of alluded to the fact that most of that curriculum is nonsense. It's useless for most people. And I played the game. I got straight A's all through school. And a couple years ago, I took a test just to show some of the parents at Acton Academy. I went back and took a math test to see what my quote-unquote grade level was, right? And it was at 6th grade. 6th grade.
Confidence giving their kids to you?
That's right. So Acton Academy, man, come to, right? So it's the worst sales pitch that's ever happened. But I'm trying to prove a point, because I also make good money. I run multiple businesses that are doing a lot of money. I get paid a lot of money by big businesses that make a lot more money than I do to go in and speak to them about how to. So academia is not what's transferable, right? So we're wasting a lot of time teaching kids to outsource their thoughts, teaching them to outsource their thinking. And I think that is one of the things that kills me the most. A focus on academia and theory is a problem. In a recent TedX, I talk about my son who wants to do jujitsu, right? 6 years old. And I gave the example of, well, school would say, cool, then here's this book, here's this multiple choice test, here's this, you're going to watch this video, you're going to do a trifold board, and somebody's going to come by, and as long as you follow the rubric, you're going to do it. And then they're going to tell you, great, you know jujitsu. Whereas the real world says, go get on the mat, go get your ass kicked, go suck at it, and then keep going. And you'll learn. And you learn, from mentors and master instructors, right? And then that's how you actually get better. And it's a simplified way to say, well, that's how everything works. You got to start actually doing it, not talking about the academic theory. So school is all about academic theory and not necessarily anything that's transferable. Whereas in Acton, we want to go, hey, you've got, first of all, responsibility. We're not going to outsource the responsibility. You've got the responsibility here to make decisions, to collaborate, to fight through some stuff, to fight through your own stuff of wanting to not do anything and actually push yourself to get something done. And you've got to do something that's transferable into the real world. So that's a big part of it. But what I don't like about conventional school even more are the habits that are built. It's the sneaky habits that are built. Ooh. Right? It's not just that you're wasting time on academia. So what are you actually spending your time doing? Well, you're spending your time being trained to a bell. You're spending time being trained that anybody who claims authority is somebody you have to be blindly obedient to, and you've just got to kind of play their game. You're spending time being made this background actor in your own life rather than learning to write your own script. And, it's everything is about obedience. Everything is, I got to raise my hand to ask if I can go to the bathroom. Like, there's all of those things. So by the time you come out of there, 12, 13 years, those are the habits you've built. So when you go to a job or something where you've got to take personal responsibility, you're like, well, shit, what do you want me to do? What's the rubric? And I'm not going to go any further. And I don't know, I don't actually have any idea if I like something, if I don't like it, if I'm good at something, if I'm not good, because I actually haven't really experienced anything. I've done the same narrow scope of academia that everybody else did, and I'm getting judged on how well I played that silly game. And that's a sneaky habit because it's a mindset, and it sucks the mindset, sucks the personal responsibility right out of the person.
What happens at Acton Academy if someone's not pulling their weight? They're not like doing their work.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to be like a little free with what the person can pick and choose. But maybe some of what I'm aware of, like sometimes you guys do stuff as like a team. And what if someone's just like, how does that work out?
Yeah. So it's contextual, depends on what they're not pulling the weight around. If it's their own individual goals, we really want to bring some sovereignty back to the parents too. So one of the things that is in there is the parents have access to see every single thing the young person is doing. Parents have access to what's called a journey tracker where they can see the goals that are being set and the goals that are either being met or not met. So we want the parents to be, we don't want to be the hammers going, hey, you're not meeting your stuff. We want the parents to be able to see it and go, you guys have the conversation. If you're cool with them just kind of taking some time off and just kind of, then great. Otherwise, they need to kind of get after it, right? But if it's a real world project, it's going to be the same kind of thing as real world consequences of doing a presentation.
Stay a little closer to the mic.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. So, real world. If you had a real world project that you were doing, you had a presentation you had to make, and somebody didn't pull their weight at a job. Well, there's going to be this internal strife, and when it comes for a time for a promotion or something like that, when everybody's going to say, "Hey, man, look, Andrew never really pulls his weight. Like the dude doesn't come in, he doesn't show up on time, he doesn't do this and that. Like he shouldn't be up for that promotion, right?" So at Acton, it'll be the same thing. We'll have these exhibitions every 6 weeks. And what we'll end up seeing is if teams come together, if they're really holding each other accountable to the contracts that they sign, saying, look, we're going to do this together. If they're really doing that, those exhibitions, I've had it to where they're like, hey, we're not going to put your name on this project. And so then parents show up and they're like, oh, okay, cool. What'd you do? You know what, Jake, what did you do? And Jake's got to talk to dad right there and go, yeah, well, they didn't put, none of my stuff is, well, he's got to have that conversation where it comes down to my team didn't put me in there because I actually didn't do anything, and then there's all these other little systems of accountability where they can, they can ultimately get to the point where they actually kick somebody out. I mean, that is real. And we have fired students, we fired a couple high school students last year. And when I say we, high school students fired other high school students, and they wrote letters to the parents saying, thank you, for letting them be here and that time, but we're going to be letting them go. If there's any kind of tuition that needs to be, given back to you, we're going to make sure that tuition comes back to you. I mean, they get fired for not holding their weight. And there's all these performance reviews and performance contracts that'll go in place, for it's like a job. Like you're not holding your weight, you can actually get let go.
It's interesting because it makes me think of situations in normal school where if something does happen to a kid, if the teacher gives a kid a C- or if they get a little bit of a bad grade, mom or dad goes to the teacher and is like, my son studied for this test. I need you to do something about this. What happens? Do you have parents come to you when if their student says something or whatever? Does that happen, or do parents also, do they get behind what's going on here?
Yes and yes. So we try to yes and yes. So we try. We had to learn this the hard way. And I made, especially just being so excited about what I'd seen within this network and the opportunity that I know the young people have versus traditional school. so excited. So I made the mistake of having some parents that, I think almost believed more in me and my excitement around it versus believing in their young heroes. And that's what I'm always at. I'm not asking you to believe in me. I'm not asking you to believe in Acton. I'm asking you to believe in your young human and put the, raise the bar of expectation, right? So we learned that the hard way and had some transitions we had to make, but we've got to, a point where there's a filtering system now to try to make sure parents are all on board. We're like, look, our ideal day is that we're completely out of the way, which means you've got to be okay with us being completely out of the way, which means they're going to make some mistakes. They're going to fail on some things. And you've got to be okay with that as a parent because that's real learning. That's a real learning scenario. But you'll also have the situations that happen and, maybe a young person's not taking personal responsibility and then goes home and will spin their version of here's what it is and here's what's happened. Of course, right? Of course. So that, to be honest, is one of the hardest situations because I also don't want to get into a battle with that young person and bring the parents in and have this, well, you were supposed to, and I don't want to play that. We want to, so when we have that kind of scenario, if the parents are upset and calling for a meeting, that's fine. The hero has to be there as well. We don't have parent meetings without that young hero, ever. So the hero's got to be in there too, and he or she has to lead that meeting. They've got to say, hey, this is what's going on. Because that way we can always point back to the contracts and go, okay, well, here's what you said you were going to do. What did you actually do? And it's a better way to put that mirror in front. And usually when we come out of those meetings, the parents are like, got it. We feel good. What the hell? Like, let's go. Get on it. You know what I mean? Because most of the time it's there. All of the opportunities there, what they don't like, what adults don't like about Acton is that they are tied so much to that religious, you're going to learn by force, and we won't do it. That's what they end up not liking. They like the idea, but if there's not personal responsibility is not being taken and they're getting whatever story about why I can't or why I'm not or why this is going, they want us to come in and be the hammer, and we won't do it. We're opening doors. That's it.
So I think we were in Atlanta the last time we spoke. We ran into you at the airport, and I had asked you, like, how young can we, get students in? Because I'm fired up.
The younger, the better.
So I think you had said somewhere around 5 we could actually start to get going. What do they learn? I mean, what's school look like for a 5-year-old at Acton?
That's a good question. So the younger, the better because of that mindset you're developing. Right? It's almost for us it's really, really hard. And I kudos to Jake, man. And that's honestly, a lot of it goes back to awesome parenting and the way you guys support him too, because he came in and he was willing to try things and he was able to, and it took him a while to kind of even get his groove, and he was watching and he was like, this is way freaking different. But it's so hard to get somebody to come in and take extreme ownership over their own. It's hard to get adults to do that, right? It's really hard to get a 14, 15-year-old to do that. Especially when they've come from conventional school, right? It's like, no, you've got to create your goals and you're responsible for going and getting those. And we're going to give you tools here and we're going to give you experiences here, but you've got to take something out of that. So the younger, the better, because then they never know any different. They're used to having hard conversations. They're used to all of those things. But at 5, play is how they learn, right? It's much more of like a Montessori type setup. Okay. So they're given options of jobs to do, responsibilities to take on, and some of those responsibilities look like games, and they are games, but they're also games where they're learning some of the fundamental skills. But the social emotional is a big deal. Getting them to understand choices by giving them good choices. You're not sovereign at 5 years old. I know there's a lot of the unschooling advocates that are like, they'll always make great choices, and if they just want to eat Skittles for dinner, that's shitty parenting. Sorry, you're being a moron. But if you go, hey, you're 5, I want you to learn how to make choices. Here's good choice: A, B, C, D, E, and F. What do you want to choose? You don't talk about G, H, I, J, K, L because those are all bad choices, right? So you talk about the good ones and you give them that. That's how kind of the studio is set up. So they take on various responsibilities. And then they start to learn rules of engagement on conversation, so social, emotional. And really that play-based kind of mentality should go up through about 7 or 8 years old. We should not be hammering academics early for them. If they're interested in it and they self-direct and they start taking on some of the more academic challenges, great, roll with it. That's awesome. But we're not going to put specific metrics on it, and like in a conveyor belt school where it's like, no, you've got to be able to do this academically, this academically, this academically, or you're not going to first grade, or you're not going to second grade. Developmentally, we're screwing kids up with that focus. So very much play-based, social, emotional kind of stuff. And honestly, we don't hit the academics super, super hard until really middle school. And you can finish all 12 years of the, full-on curriculum in middle school in 3 years, 4 years, if you're focused. And that's not a quote-unquote gifted child. That's anybody. We're just going developmentally so, ridiculous with the way we do it. And we elongate it and we drag it out and we make it seem like it's this, 12-year process. It's not.
What about when it comes to discipline? Like one of the things I really liked about your message is when you talk about discipline, you talk about how if you show kids that it's an opportunity to have discipline, then you don't have to necessarily discipline them.
That's right. You just make it, you normalize what you normalize, right? So when you're young people, and that's why parents are so powerful, whatever is the normal status quo in your house, it's just what is always done. Humans adapt to that, right? Like this is just what normal looks like. Whether we're out in a village and we've got to walk 5 miles to get water and come back and that's just normal, or whether you just have chores around the farm, or rather, or mom and dad fight all the time and I go in my room and play video games and I just eat a bunch of garbage. Like you normalize what you make normal. So discipline is something that I think really needs a reframe, culturally speaking. Discipline, I have parents come at me usually from two angles and they go, there's the parent that I don't want to discipline my kids because I don't want them to be scared of me, or others that are like, no, I need to discipline them really, really hard so that they do the right thing and they know, and I got spanked as a kid, so I'm going to start whacking them early and I'm going to discipline them. And I think both are taking that wrong approach. The approach should be reframing discipline to being a disciplined individual. What are the habits that you have every single day? What are the non-negotiable virtues and characteristics that you exhibit, right? And that's where it goes back into like our family rules and stuff and kind of our family contract. Those are just non-negotiable values. We just have decided together, look, this is who we are. As a family, we are, these 11 rules kind of define it. Like we're going to always make sure we're doing it, and we're going to hold each other accountable to that. And if we do that on a daily basis, we are learning to be disciplined. And so that's what I always, you alluded to that. Parents say, well, how do you discipline your kids? Like, because my kids are always, hey, Mr. Inyang, nice to meet you. Look you in the eye, shake your hands. My name is Morgan. My name is Brielle. My name is Loudon. They will introduce. We sold some goats the other day, and the guy comes up, and my 9-year-old was like, hi, Mr., whatever his name was, nice to meet you. I'm Brielle. Here's the bill of sale for you. And so what we're going to ask you to do is sign here. I'll take a picture. You can keep the receipt, and then you can, hand me the cash, right? And he's going, what the hell? And I'm like, it's just normal for us. That's not weird for her. That's how it's always been. Yeah. So if you teach your young people to be disciplined humans, then you don't have to worry about disciplining them. It's just who they are.
I really am curious, going a little bit deeper on this discipline aspect, because we've talked about this on the podcast before. I was whooped as a kid, right?
So
I come from Nigerian culture, and
yes, sir.
Even back in Nigeria, in school, teachers are hitting the kids with canes.
Yeah.
It's normal,
Yeah.
right? And all the African kids I know, it's normal.
Yeah.
But then you're raised that way. I look back on it. I don't have trauma. My mom wasn't doing it out of anger. He was doing it because that's what discipline was. You talk back, you do some stupid shit. Here's the belt. That's normal.
Right.
And I had a talk with my girlfriend because she was never spanked. She ended up great, and we were talking back and forth. We're like, I had a hard time thinking about I don't want to ever discipline my kid when I have one, or spank my kid when I have one, but I feel like if that kid's like me, but I need I was an asshole, you know what I mean?
Totally.
So I'm really curious, because you probably have a lot of parents that come to you with those types of questions. What are your thoughts on that? I don't think that kids have to be spanked.
Yeah.
That's a very American sentiment, but I think it's true. But how can somebody who has gone through that,
they got to retrain the brain.
Retrain
100%, man. So, and again, I was whooped too.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, my dad was a hardcore, getting stabbed at work and having some, he was a rough dude. So we got whooped, and that's a nice way to say it. But it transferred over, and I was kind of like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily going to do that either, man, because I know that sometimes that was a little too much. But then I had my first, and I found myself, I get mad and I pop her on the butt, and she's the one that kind of came to me and was just like, can you stop doing that? And it was, little. And I was just like, and this is my little girl, you know what I mean? So, first and foremost, when we're talking about all these parenting things, and I'm talking about from experience of, first of all, being the most unperfect, parent on the planet. Like, I want people to, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, but you should always strive to be the perfect parent. Always. Standards should always remain perfection. Yeah. Right. And so she's the one that kind of came to me on that. And I just sit there and go, okay, all right, so what do we do instead? And it was, so once we kind of switched over and it was just like, look, very calm correction and natural consequence and clear boundaries. And as much as we could get ahead of the game of, okay, we wanted to be proactive, not just reactive. So we wanted to be proactive on those, kind of the family values of like, look, this is what we expect. And we didn't have the rules at that point, but it's like, okay, this is what we expect. This is the expectation of how you're going to behave. This is the expectation of what this looks like in this different situation, trying to give her as much information up front as possible. And if you miss the mark on that, well, the natural consequence is going to be this. And they understand that if you're consistent with it. Every time she misses that mark, you have that natural, calm correction. Every time she hits the mark, you praise them like a mother. You over-exaggerate the qualities that you want to see. And that starts to build a consistent understanding at that young age of, ooh, this is the way it's supposed to look. Yeah. Right? And so I use an example, I think, at that talk of my 6-year-old. There's my little guy, he's an aggressive little guy, too, right? For sure. But he's awesome, man. He's perfect. And he was outside playing on the farm, and he was outside doing his thing. And I walked by his room, and his room looked like somebody had just gone in there and beat it to shit, right? And so there's stuff everywhere. And so I'm like, hey, man. But I've been so consistent with it. All I had to do was walk outside. I'm like, Loudon, come here. I'm like, hey, man. I walked by your room. What do you think I saw? He's like, ooh, there's toys everywhere. I'm like, yep. I'm like, okay, so if you want freedom in this house, what do you have to have first? This is responsibility. Right. Responsibility comes before freedom. Right now you're outside playing, so you're exhibiting your freedom. But what should come first? It's that responsibility. Yep, you bet. So what do you need to do? I need to go clean up my stuff. Yep, cool. And he goes and cleans up his stuff. Very calm. I didn't fight. He didn't fight. There's no bad blood. And he goes and does what needs to be done. The very next day, he's out doing the same thing. I can get pissed and go out there and be like, what the? I can go, or I went back out and went, Loudon, we talked about this yesterday. Oh my gosh, yep, and runs in. A couple of days after that, it's kind of it's not even really a problem, right? And so I didn't have to get the fights, I didn't have to get the emotions, I didn't have to get the spankings. Likewise, he was walking out, around the same time, we're walking out to the garden, and he starts to go through this little gate, and he stops, and he goes, whoops, and he holds the gate open, and he goes, ladies first. And he lets his 2 older sisters, and he lets my wife go through, lets his mom go through, right? So I went and I grabbed him and I picked him up and I'm like, hey, I need you to listen to me right now. That's what a good man does right there. That was a gentlemanly thing to do. You just let your sisters go first. You let your mom go first. Man, I'm so proud of you because you're a good man. And I put him down and let him go. I'm consistent on both of those now. And that makes all the difference, right? Praising, inspirationally, when they do that, like over the top, like that's the character right there. And then calmly correcting. If you really want to put gasoline on that fire, you make sure they can hold you accountable when you mess up too. And then you are building respect like nothing else. And everything just turns into this adult conversation. So the other day when I had my socks and I had taken them off because I had a bunch of stickers in them from the farm, and I was like, oh shit, I'm sitting on the couch for a second. I took them off and I set them on the floor, and he comes in, he's like, Dad, we don't just put our socks on the floor. And I can be, hey, I'm the father. I can be that asshole. I can do that and create a freaking barrier between myself and my kid. Or I can go, oh my gosh, man, thank you for holding me accountable, because that's exactly what I need. So I got my ass up and picked up my socks and went and put them in the dirty clothes. Then it's like, all right, cool. all they want is a little bit of respect. They want to know, they want boundaries. They crave those boundaries, and they want to know that you respect them as an individual as well, and that you hold very high standards. But most importantly, they want to see that you're holding those high standards for yourself. Leading by, the first and best thing a parent can do is to get their own shit together.
Yeah, I'm curious your take on, because I had said something on Instagram about like how I will use every opportunity to tell my kids they're amazing. Just like how you're saying, like you like went over the top, like you praised them a lot. But I think, was it Carol Dweck's book about
mindset?
Mindset, yeah. Like what? I'm
Carol's
curious about your thoughts on like praising too much, maybe.
You tie it to something, right? If you just, because parents are in this whole thing, and it's like an affirmation, right? Where you just stand in the mirror and you're like, hey, you're the best. Everybody likes you. That's horseshit. Maybe you suck, and maybe nobody likes you. You can't just say it. You can't just say it and have it be true. There's got to be tied to something, right? So I'm all for that, but I wouldn't just, blanket "you're amazing" for everything. Starts to just kill what that even means. But like when Loudon opened that gate, I praised that specific thing. You were a gentleman the way you did that, right? He started doing Ninja Warrior. There's a Ninja Warrior course thing out there, and he started doing all that stuff. When he got done, I was just like, man, the way, and he's badass at it. He was great, but I'm not going to just blow smoke. Dude, no, I said, dude, your effort and the way you just poured in the whole time, the way when you fell, that time that you fell off of that, you ran over, you got back up, right? I'm tying it to a specific quality and characteristic. That never gets old. If you're just saying it to say it, you're not building anything. If anything, you're building entitlement.
You're like, Loud, let me break it down for you. You're pretty good at that, but there's probably another kid who's a little bit better, a little bit faster.
You bet.
A little bit stronger, who's practicing a little bit more.
You bet. You bet. Well, dude, and he'll see that though too. He'll see it. They'll see that, and don't be afraid to throw that either, dude. Yeah, you're good at swinging on the monkey bars, but did you see what that girl was doing, dude?
She's hanging upside down.
She's hanging us, yeah, for sure. Well, one-handed for a lot longer than you, so get your shit together. So all those, but they, again, you've got that kind of relationship built. We can have those kind of conversations, and it's not emotionally driven.
Yeah, I think I'm not a parent. So I think this is an interesting thing. But the really, I think the big thing and what I know is you're saying, there's when it comes to my culture, like number one, African culture, kids don't speak back to their parents. There's a lot of respect. Let's just say one thing
for sure.
African kids and teenagers, like there's a huge amount of reverence and respect that children have for adults, parents, etc.
You bet.
But I do think that an aspect where I'm just like, wow, that's a very interesting thing, where it's maybe for some people it's going to be hard for them to get behind, is like when your child has an opinion on what you do, like Loudon seeing your socks on the ground and being like, Dad, like me, I'd been like, my mom would have been like, what? Yeah, my socks are right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
It's interesting, but it's not an opinion if you've already made it in your house a specific, here's what we do and here's what we don't do. And when I say we, I actually mean we. Parents usually parent from a very hypocritical place. We are very willing to point the finger without holding ourselves to that same standard, right? And again, this is coming from me having made all of the mistakes you can make on that, especially with my first kid. That's why your first kid's always your therapy kid, right? Because you're going to mess them up at some point. So,
real quick, a friend of mine,
just so you know,
a friend of mine that had his daughter told me, Nsima, you better get all your shit in line before you have kids, because they will expose all of your flaws.
Oh, they expose everything. You bet. Quickly. So freaking true. So true, man. So wait, what were we saying on that? The opinion. Yeah. So, but that's not an opinion, because we have established that this is what we do and this is what we don't do, and we stay consistent. If you say this is what we do and this is what we don't do, but sometimes you kind of let it go, they don't believe you. If you say this is what we do and this is what we don't do, but you're not a part of that, they don't believe you. That's what's different. If you're consistent about it, then it is what it is. So it's not being and he was very, very respectful. It was just, Dad, we don't do this. And it just allows me to have that exact same conversation. Dad, don't, I came in it wasn't too long. I came in the kitchen and was complaining about something. And my girls, Dad, rule number 6, man, it's no complaining. Fix it. Like, what's your solution on this? I needed the adult. They were just like, Dad, you're complaining. Like, what are you going to do about that? You don't want to complain. You don't want to be in that kind of emotional state. And that's a normal conversation for us, focusing on that and touching on it every week, you know, checking on those rules. How is everybody doing around that? So when that's the case, it's just you kind of have these other adults in the room that are helping hold you accountable. They help me be on my game with everything, with the way I treat my wife, with the way I treat them, with the way I treat myself, with the way I just talk about life in general, with the way I handle work. Like, we're all a team that way.
I think hitting, you know, going back to that topic is an inability to communicate. I think maybe for some people, you know, I know like in my family history, both of my grandparents had a lot of children. Yeah. And so of course not of course, but there was some hitting going on in both those households. Probably just because like, I don't know, we got 10 kids and a lot of kids are flying around and, you know, this kid needs a swat in the butt because he can't hit the other kid with his Tonka truck or whatever. You know? But I always think that any sort of violence, and even though hitting a child may not be looked at as violence, I view it as violence. I think that any form of hitting is an inability to communicate.
I think that's
what it is that you're trying to really convey. Because could you say it? Like, could you talk it out? Is there a way? And somebody might be like, well, the kid's 3. How the hell am I going to communicate with a 3-year-old? But is hitting them like is that a good option?
It's the lazy way to go. And the reality is and I love the timing of this too. And I love, Courtney, I love you. I love you very much. It's my sister. And she was over last night at my mom's and she's got a 2-year-old, you know, my little nephew, and he's freaking awesome, but he was losing his stuff. And it's a kind of a normal thing. And she was getting super fired up. And we talked about this last night. She's like, God, what do I do? Like, your kids are never like this. What do I do? You know, and I just kind of went, and she's like, no, I'm serious. I'm asking you, what do I do? Like, what is going on?
Get madder and see how that works.
And that's what, and I said, do you really want the honest answer? She's like, yeah. I'm like, well, this is your fault. This is you having 2 years to build a relationship with him and build consistency with him. And you haven't built it. So now you can just get super pissed and go for, like you said, the quick, lazy answer is, I'm going to beat you into submission and see how that works out for a long tail relationship and mindset. Or I can go, okay, I've been kind of missing the boat for 2 years, and you can start to put the time in now. It's never too late to change. Again, no perfect parents, but the sooner you can get your stuff figured out and start to be consistent and hold yourself to that higher standard too, and all those things we're talking about, the better. I agree. I think that it's the lazy, quick way to go. And I get it. When you got 10 kids, 15 kids, you know, 38 kids, it's like, I don't even know which one, you know, it's like whatever I can do, man. But I think it's the lazy way to go.
I think, you know, for me, you know, I was the baby of my family. I had 2 older brothers, and they both got hit quite a bit. And then when I came along, I saw that didn't work. It just didn't work well. My oldest brother got hit the most, and he turned out the worst. And then Chris got hit somewhere. And I was just talking about it from a behavior standpoint.
Right.
And I was a pussy, and I was a good boy. I didn't get in trouble. That's so funny. But like after kind of seeing that, you know, and going through that experience on my own and seeing my parents become better parents. My brother, like my oldest brother, broke my parents in. I think they were trying to break him to like get him to listen. For sure. He broke them of a bad habit. They weren't like, my parents weren't abusive by any means, but
no,
they were religious folks. And they were just trying to instill discipline the way that they learned.
And that's the thing, right? It's those habits that we are passing down. I mean, it's you, if you're not intentional about everything from a parenting standpoint, you will just default to the way you were parented in many, many ways, right? If you're not thinking about it proactively, you'll just react the way that you were raised. I mean, that's it. And, you know, and I use the example of kind of training elephants. And we teach our kids very, very early the same kind of things that we are, you know, our minds are kind of engaged in. I talk about, you know, the way they train elephants. They take them when they're a baby and they tie that rope around, right? And they try to rip the rope and they just can't do it. And so then they have it in their mind like, oh shit. But then not too long after that, they're these huge, powerful, magnificent beasts, and and you can still keep them right there with a tiny little rope. And it's not because they can't physically pull it, but it's because they can't mentally They've been trained to believe, so they got this mental cage around them. A lot of us as adults have those same kind of mental cages where we can't get out of that, whether it's from parenting or I got to send my kid to a regular, conveyor belt school kind of environment or whatever that is. It's just that's how I grew up. That's how I was raised. That's what I did. And so now I feel comfortable in that. Even if I can intellectually see that this doesn't make sense, my emotions are really comfortable staying in that cage. And so, you know what? Son, daughter, I'm going to go ahead and put you in that cage with me. And we're just going to kind of, and fucking the cycle just perpetuates, and I think that's the dangerous thing. We're not intentional enough, period.
The interesting thing about this is that there's so many different types of parenting within cultures. And obviously there's also the way you were parented, has an effect on how you parent your children. But then it's like, you don't know who's going to come out of it unscathed. I know so many kids who, they were spanked as kids and they ended up being perfectly okay. But I know on the other side, kids that were spanked, not even as bad as me, and that's trauma for them. It's quite literally, they remember it as trauma, and then they do the same thing, not just to potentially their children, but they do that's their reaction to other people.
That's right.
I know people who have inflicted that type of damage upon people within their relationships, because violence is something that in the back of their head, when anger happens and annoyance happens, I got to give you a slap. That's just how things are.
That's right.
So you don't know.
You don't know.
It's a gamble.
And even within your own household, right? And I've got two brothers and a sister, and we were all raised, same roof. Very, very different reactions to the way we were raised. Very, very different reactions. We all can look back and remember the same things, but we all use those as very different experiences to draw from, and I look at them as a net positive, and I'm like, I get what not to do, and I think this was great, and I get, I get Dad as a human being. I understand what he was trying to do. I understand what he must have been going through, and I don't have any ill will towards him for that. I don't want anything but the best for him, and then another sibling where it's like, I would kill him if I saw him today, and we had the same stuff, it's the same household. So yeah, you're right.
That's the other thing to think about. There's other people in the household.
Yes, sir.
Normally, right? So it's gonna have a different impact. One person getting hit versus another person getting hit. Maybe even one, if it's an abusive situation. I know my mother went through that, and in her situation, she was always like, why am I getting hit? Because her brothers would get hit, and she would feel bad for them, and then she felt guilty and had. What a complex
So
which is
complex.
A horrible way to grow up.
That's right. And then how you never, like you said, you don't know where you transfer that over. So that guilt and that feeling of guilt, does that transfer over to other things too, and not just parenting, but does it just transfer over to life in general? If you start seeing somebody that you have something and they don't, and you just it plays out in so many different ways. So many different ways.
Andrew, see if you can bring up, I sent you over just a screen capture of the Liver King. If you just type in Liver King, Mark Bell, you'll
was it on his or was it on yours?
It's on ours.
Okay.
He seemed like a cool dude.
He is. Interesting. A lot of interesting stuff, but he has his kids do this kind of thing at the table.
Yeah.
And I wanted to show this to you and
cool.
kind of get some of your, get a little bit of your thoughts on it.
So was it like a timestamp? Is that what you mean?
Yes,
okay,
correct.
Got it.
I also wanted to point out some just massive changes with my son. Huge changes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the school or if it was just a maturation that was going on, but I think your school had a lot to do with it. I remember a particular day. I'm getting up. I'm getting ready to go to the gym on Saturday morning, and it's I don't know. It's 6:30 in the morning or something, and he's up and he's dressed and stuff, and I was like, oh, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to school. And I was like, you probably go back to bed. It's Saturday. And he's like, no, I got classmates to help. He's like, we have an event going on. And I was like, cool. I was like, when do you got to be there? He's like, in about an hour. He's like, I'm gonna leave in 10 minutes because we live kind of far away.
Yeah.
I never before saw that from him in that particular way. So I thought that was awesome.
That's
He
great.
took this responsibility. He got up on time on the weekend, and he was fired up, and he was excited to go. And he told me all about the fair and all about the different things that people created to sell at this particular fair, and how he was helping and stuff like that.
Yep.
But with a lot of other stuff just around the house, I would say, hey, Jake, can you replace the water, or can you, take out the garbage or anything like that? He's like, yep. and he would just go and he would just do it. Now he wasn't like, before that, it wasn't a very difficult
Not combative.
kid.
Sure.
He wasn't combative.
Yeah.
He wouldn't talk back, things like that. But, I did have to have conversations with him. Hey, it'd be helpful if you just did it the first time, because we're a family. We try to all work together. And I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do. I do those same responsibilities, but it's just helpful, and it's just pointing out things like that to him. But I've noticed after he did go to Acton,
That's awesome.
when he definitely went through like a lot of really, really cool changes, I think. And even another thing that happened too was I just noticed him playing his guitar more, and him like he was doing that a little bit before, but he like leaned into that side of things, because you guys promote so much about really going after the things that you're interested in.
And he got so much support there, man. I mean, I remember him being in the studio and playing, and everybody's kind of doing their stuff. It was during kind of their individual times where they were doing like individual academia or individual projects and things, and he was over kind of playing, and he had conversations, and they were all like, no man, like this is rad, like go get it. They were all very supportive, like, oh, you're really good, like this is awesome. And he's playing these tunes, and I'm like, what? And I remember calling out across the auditorium, because he's playing some like, he was playing Metallica. He played this really obscure like Alice in Chains, and as some of my favorite bands from when I was growing up, and I'm like, Jake, I'm calling across. He's like, yeah. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. I remember him just getting after that. And, the young people are supportive of everybody going after their passions and going after their stuff. And so again, you normalize what you make normal. Like, what is the thing you just do every day? And so that's, the talk about personal responsibility, the end of the day in those studios where they've got jobs, like they're responsible for cleaning up certain things and putting certain, especially the high school, and they're responsible for going in and helping some of the other younger students, and they're responsible for going out in the parking lot and taking care of stuff and moving barriers and doing, like, they just, that becomes normal, as well as the rules of engagement. They have hard conversations all the time, every day. And whether it's a hard conversation around something that's happening, socially or culturally, and they're having to, kind of debate on it, or whether somebody is bringing a topic they're passionate about and they're debating on it, or whether it's just, hey, no, as a group, these guys want to do this and make this kind of the focus the next 6 weeks. And these guys are like, abso-freaking-lutely not. And that happens. But they have to have those hard conversations, and we focus on the rules of engagement of a good conversation. And here's what a good conversation looks like. If you'll focus on the rules during any conversation, the content becomes irrelevant. You can talk about anything, because you're not going to get overly emotional about it, because you're going to present as much evidence as you have, because you're going to understand that you're going to be able to learn from everybody there. And so I need to actually listen to what you say and what you say. And at the end of the day, if Mark presents something he's got better evidence than I do, I need to also be, I gotta go, okay, I need to change my mind on this, right? And it's all of those things, are hammered in on a daily basis. And so I think you're right, talking about something you talked about earlier. What we've seen for a lot of our graduates is they go into the quote unquote real world, and they've got their jobs in various areas, and they're the ones that come back and go, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for this. I'm so thankful for those expectations.
Sorry to interrupt. Here's another great one. Jake came home one day, and he was like, I filled out an application at In-N-Out Burger.
Nice.
And he's like, I have an interview tomorrow or something. So he goes in and does his interview. I'm not sure, like, it didn't go well or whatever happened, And then so I asked him like a week later, and he's like, I didn't get a call back, but my friend did. So he's like, I think he got the job. So then, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks go by, and he comes back home, and he's like, I got a job at In-N-Out. And I was like, oh, they finally called you. Yeah. He goes, no. He goes, I was a little bummed, after I didn't get the job and my friend got the job. He goes, but then I was just like, I could just drive to another In-N-Out. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, I drove to another In-N-Out, filled out an application there. They called me. I did an interview, and I got the job.
Love it, dude.
He didn't tell me like any of the backstory. Yeah, he just went out and
went out and did it.
Yeah, I thought that was really awesome.
What a stud. He's a rad human. Yeah. He is. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but he is a rad young man.
I just thought that was very mature.
It's very mature. Absolutely. I know 30-year-olds that wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I've had mothers call me and go, I see your building that you're opening in Sacramento. My son is a teacher. He would love to work there. I'm like, you would love for him to work there, or he would love to work there?
Oh, wow.
It's like, oh no, he would love to work there. And so I'm like, okay, why are you calling me, ma'am? Well, I just said I would, I would call and just get some background information. How old's your son? I said, he's 31. He's a teacher. Okay, you obviously know nothing about what we do, because that's automatically, I don't, I want nothing bad for him, right? But my respect level for him is not, not starting out strong.
All right, here's a Liver King dinner table here.
Nice.
I put in the work, and I was ready for this. But thank you for doing that. You guys did good. Hopefully it rains again.
More pressure since I'm in front of the camera.
Yep.
All right. What up, primals? This is the day that we get prepared to get kicked in the chest, punched in the chest, or shot in the chest. So we start working on that Roman chest plate. We get ready for life, for the unexpected events we call life. To prepare to load, to mechanically load up. Because one day you might need the strength to save somebody else's life, to save your own life, to save a child's life, or maybe even your own child's life. What kind of man can you call yourself if you can't pull your own weight, or if you can't pull somebody else's weight? So go get in the gym, go do some push-ups, go do some pull-ups, go get ready for life, go in that shit Liver King out.
You can pause it there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so funny, man.
So that's just some of the
That's rad.
things that he has the kids, they share a win for the day, and both kids were just sharing that they were pumped because it rained that day, and they were outside already like messing with the hose, and they were doing stuff with that, and so that was their win for the day. And then he has them like share like philosophy, which is them mimicking the exact things that he says.
Of course.
Videos and stuff like that. But like, what do you think of that kind of thing?
So we have those, we have family meetings for ourselves too. We do dinner every night. That's non-negotiable. If we can get other meals in, great. We do dinner every night. No, absolutely. And each one's relatively casual. It's just, and we see each other all during the day, so we don't have to, check in as much. But it's just more like, hey, what was kind of the favorite thing you did today, and what kind of things are you working on? What are you planning for tomorrow? That's always a big thing for us. Is like, what is your goal for tomorrow? What is your plan? Kind of the Craig Ballantyne, like do the brain dump, right? And so like tomorrow when you get up, what are you handling? What's on your checklist? And they all have checklists that they put together, and it's got their chores on it, but it also has whatever goals they want to accomplish for the day. And so what's on your list for tomorrow? And cool, do you need help? What do you need from us? And just kind of have that support. So we'll have quick check-ins, but then once a week we'll have a more of a hardcore family meeting where we just dive in and go, okay, what, if we've got our 11 rules, like which one, are we hitting all these as a family? Are we doing all these okay? Which one do I need to work on more right now? What do you think you need to work on more? And we'll just touch through. It doesn't take long. It's just 5, 6, 7 minutes. But we touch on those things every single week just to see like, hey, you know what? I felt like this week there was, more complaining, or there was whatever. We can just kind of address those things. So we have family meetings every week. I love that he does it. And people will go, well, that's kind of silly. That's over the top. It goes back to kind of what we started with as far as, parents and your influence. Everybody is being brainwashed, especially young people. It's just who's doing the washing. They're going to be brainwashed by culture, or they're going to be brainwashed by Netflix. They're going to be brainwashed by their video games. They're going to be brainwashed by the school system. They're going to be So wouldn't you rather it be you? Shouldn't you be the primary one going, hey, this is us as a family unit. These are our goals. These are our objectives. Shouldn't you be the one doing the majority of that? So I love that he does that. And we just, that's him. I'm not like him. So I don't lead my family like that. And in that particular, like, that's just not my personality. But I have got more of an entrepreneurial personality, and very much around personal development and, and personal responsibility. And like, that's just mine. So that's how I lead my family. So those are kind of the conversations we have, daily. And we have our business meetings every Saturday.
One thing I liked about that was just to get your kids to talk and to be able to like make a sale. Like that's kind of what it sounded like to me. It's like great. A little bit of like a wrestling promo.
Totally.
To ask your kids to all of a sudden do it when they're like 11 or 12 out of nowhere would be really weird and probably not appropriate and probably wouldn't really make any sense. But I think if you start your kids out with simple stuff, whatever you think is appropriate for your children, that's his household. He does his own thing, his own way.
That's right.
In my house, we just kind of naturally more have conversation.
Yeah.
And just knowing the things that I know and being around some of the people that I am around, we kind of do share wins and stuff, but I kind of secretly navigate that. And
Sure.
we don't make it like as much of like a thing.
Sure.
But that's also because I didn't start out that way.
Sure.
If I started that way when the kids were young, I would just be like, hey, what was your win for today?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
For sure. And that's, what I like about our specific rules, we've got our 11, and I say rules and everybody hears it's our values or whatever you want to call them, right? But our 11 is they're hanging on the wall. They're right there. And what I like about that for young people specifically is they've got those tangible anchors to go back to.
Can you share what they are?
All right. So,
I have a picture in my
yeah,
phone.
I
I'll
sent you a
send it to
picture of them.
Andrew.
Huh?
Like, what are these rules?
Yeah. Yep. And I think, I should have them memorized. And I got it on my phone too. But, and I'll I'll tell you all 11 if you want. I mean, we got,
shoot it over to you, Andrew. You can pull it up on the screen there. Do you sometimes have the kids like, it sounds to me like you guys can kind of point to it, you guys can be like, hey, rule 4,
That's exactly what it is.
like with the socks, right?
That's exactly what it is. It's very,
rule
very
4.
tangible, right? So will this specific thing be something we address as specifically, 10 years from now? Maybe not. Might not even have to. But as they're 11, 9, and 6, it's just a very, very tangible thing for them to look at. It's a very tangible roadmap for them to follow. I think that's what I like.
This is so cool because it's like, my mom was a single parent,
Yeah.
but she did an amazing job.
Yeah.
Like I talked about how the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, she talks about don't tell your kid they're talented, etc. My mom never did that, but she always praised me on effort, which
That's
is why
it.
I find
Bingo.
that valuable in other people.
Bingo.
But when I also look back at my parenting, I think about things that I'm definitely going to do, but I also think about a lot of things that I want to advance upon because it wasn't a 2-parent household.
Right.
There was a little bit of like lack there,
That's right.
obviously, right?
Sure.
But with the way you're setting things up for your kids and these 11 rules that we're going to go over, it's almost like you're implanting a system for when your kids have kids, they'll be able to think clearly like, our family does this. Our family had these rules. These rules are important. I can pass this on to my kids,
Right.
who can then pass that on to their kids.
Right.
It's so systematized that it's dope.
That's the way to do it, right? And I want them to have a clear system, clear thinking, clear actions to take, and then they'll do the same thing because I don't know what the world's going to look like at that point, right? So I'm going to trust them to do the same thing and go, how do I improve this for our situation, for our family? I'm not going to pretend like we've got all the answers and it's like, of course not. Like they need to take that and go, okay, well, this is what we like. This is what we didn't like. This is what the world looks like now. This is what my family needs. But that's it. It's creating that system for them, especially when they are young. It's the blueprint.
You're getting your kids to mature quickly, and what a huge difference that makes when you hear "yes, sir," "yes, ma'am." You're like, who said that? It's like the little 8-year-old kid over there said that.
Man,
holy smokes!
And people look at that as a bad thing now, where they look at like, oh, let him be a kid, and that's usually an excuse for let him be a little asshole. Yeah, it's almost always that. The parents that say that most, everything in moderation, just means you don't hold a boundary for shit. That's what it means. Let's be honest about it. Most of the people that say that stuff all the time, right? So, the whole like, oh, let your kid be a kid, and gosh, I tell you what, my kids are the most mature young people I know, and they're the happiest because they're purpose driven. They're happy, and I talk about teenager wasn't even a term until 1944. That wasn't even a thing.
Really?
It wasn't even a term. It was you're 13. Congrats, you're a man. Take on some responsibility like a man would. You've got more things to do. Now it's just like, oh, you're 13. We're going to it's a delayed adulthood. You're a teenager. We know your brain's not fully developed. So we use all of these excuses to just let people off the hook and why don't you just take 17 years off of your life now? And that's why you've got these 30-year-old, I know 40-year-old children and I know 15-year-old adults. And maturity is not a bad thing. Taking on that responsibility early is not a bad thing. They actually like it. And it opens up more doors and opportunities for them too. It really does.
Power Project family, I hope you guys are enjoying this episode. Now, Mark, Andrew, and myself have been cold plunging for a while now. We actually use the Cold Plunge XL. But the reason why this has become part of our daily routine every single day is because of honestly how good it makes us feel coming out of that water. Now, if you want to take a cold shower, that is beneficial and you need to be doing that if you don't have a cold plunge. But if you do get a cold plunge that goes all the way down to 39 degrees, it's crazy because Andrew Huberman actually talked about the benefits of dopamine post cold plunging. Now, cocaine gives you a 2.5 rise in your dopamine release. Cold plunging gives you that also, but it also gives you a sustained higher level of dopamine throughout your day. That's just one of the benefits, as there are many. So if you guys want to get on it, Andrew, how can they?
Oh, yes. You guys got to head over to thecoldplunge.com and at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject to save $150 off. And before we drop off here, I do have to say that this has been the absolute best thing I have ever done for my mental health. Every single day I get in this cold plunge and I come out a happier, more positive, and more vibrant human. I can't recommend this enough. Again, thecoldplunge.com, promo code PowerProject to save $150 off. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
You and your family are like in on a little secret, right? When you go around other families and you see kids acting appropriately, this happens with me and Quinn a lot of times. Quinn will see the way someone acts and she'll just like look at me like with her eyes.
Holy
yeah,
yes,
like
sir.
Holy shit! Like
You're
this,
exactly
this
right.
family's not.
You're exactly
chaotic.
right, and it works the other way too. So when we all went down to Mexico for that trip in December, right? And Beaudreau and Mickler and John and all those guys and everybody that had kids, we all brought our kids too. And Tanner has like 30 kids himself, you know, and so he's got 6. I think he's got 5. He's got 6 on. He's got number 6 on the way, but it's a lot. So he is a stud, and so we all had our kids too. And what I love about what Bear said to me at that, when we all went down there, he's like, look, you know, some of you guys I only know from, you know, your media appearances or social media or whatever. You can fake it on TV or on your screens, but if we're all down here for a week and you've got your wife here and you've got your kids here, you can't fake it for that long because we're all going to be together this whole time. And he was spot on, right? You can't. And what was cool was we would all go out to these restaurants. We'd have all the adults over here. We'd have all the kids over here. And they were anywhere from like 3 to like 11 or 12. They had their own table. They were doing their own thing. They were all ordering their own food. They were all helping each other, right? Because everybody kind of comes from this same sort of mindset. And all the kids were doing this. It didn't, without fail, every time we went out, all of the, you know, the people at the restaurant or people that were sitting there eating would come up and go, what have you guys, how did you guys do this? And so it's just like the kids will go out somewhere and they'll see some other kids going crazy and they'll be like, holy moly. They will also tell you, we come back and like, hey, that family has their stuff together. Yeah. You know, those kids are awesome. We would hang out with them all the time. You know, we get that all the time, man. It's funny. We went and hung out with a relatively well-known family not that long ago. And it was our first time meeting them. And we all kind of, you know, hung out and we had a great time. We left and asked my kids, like, how'd it go? And they're like, oh, it's fine. Like, what does that mean? No, it's fine. They're nice. It's just, I don't know, just kind of childish. They're the same damn age. Same age, but it's just like, just a little childish, you know? And it's like, okay, man, that's cool. All good. You know, they'll tell you. They'll be honest.
That's great. Let's go over these rules.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so, number 1, being honest, and that, we always say be honest, and it starts with yourself. So number 1, we don't lie to our kids ever, period, end of story. Again, it goes back to that hypocrisy thing, right? If we say we don't lie and then we even talk, and again, parent however the hell you want. People get pissed at me when I say this, but we don't do Santa Claus. We never have. And that's, to me, that's a lie because, hey, he's not real. So we just don't do it. And so, you know, being honest matters, but being honest starting with yourself too.
What about holding information from the kids? Let's say there's you come on some financial hard times or just have the difficult conversation with them. What do you do in your household?
So it depends on what it is, right? So, you know, school shooting or a shooting in Chicago a couple of days ago, that's not something I'm bringing to my kids. So I'm not lying about it, but if they heard about it and just went, hey, we heard about this, I'm not going to go deep dive into it, but I'll give them the information they need to know, and we'll have that. We'll have the conversation. Finances, I think parents should be intentional about talking to their kids about it. My kids know where we stand. They know all of the business accounts look like. They know what our trusts look like. They have kind of an idea of how the trusts work and the foundations work and all that kind of stuff. And so, I mean, we talk about that very, very intentionally. So, you know, that's a different sort of thing, you know. But if they ask a question about something, you know, at very least we can say, you know what, you wouldn't necessarily understand the answers to that. So I'll give you the kind of the surface level. And as you get a little older and get some more understanding, you know, we'll have that kind of conversation. But what if like
a family member's like real sick or something? Like you just, you know, you have that hard conversation. You say, hey, you know, Aunt so-and-so, she has brain cancer and like, it's not looking good.
Had that conversation around Aunt so-and-so last week. My mom's sister right now. Yeah, you bet. I mean, that's just, hey, this is what she's dealing with. And this is kind of what they're doing. And it's like, okay. And it's like, are you guys, so if you feel like talking about it, if anything comes up, let us know. And this is kind of how we're talk through those conversations.
I always believed in I think kids are like really intuitive and they're really smart. If you're harboring like a lot of stuff and not communicating with them, I don't think it's great.
They know, they pay attention, man. They're so much smarter and more intuitive, right? We haven't trained it out of them yet.
Right.
And the world hasn't beat it out of them yet. So they're more in tune with that. So absolutely, man, have those conversations and they can handle that. So yeah, 100%. Being a copycat. And so that for us is, we talk about the patterns of success, right? And so it's who is doing something you want to do. And if they're doing something, how did they get there? Because if they can get there, you can get there too. So what does that look like? And we take it a little step further and kind of do that whole, kind of board of directors sort of thing from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, right? You got kind of a board of directors for all areas of your life sort of deal. So it's find those patterns of success and kind of have your board of directors. Who is that person that you kind of look up to there? Because if you look up to them, they either have something that you want, or maybe there's something there that they exhibit, a characteristic or something that is really a piece of you already. So we're not saying to be somebody else, but if you connect to something, I connected to William Wallace's, every man, dies, not every man really lives, as a 14-year-old. I remember watching that and just being like, fuck, that's right, dude, just being super excited, right? So do I want to be William Wallace? Absolutely not. But that concept, okay, cool. If he's embodying that, what do I need to do to make sure I'm embodying that every day, right? It's that same kind of concept. So being a copycat is that.
Real quick,
please.
I really do love how personal development concepts are cemented into these rules, because like the be a copycat thing, all the adult friends that I know who ended up getting into personal development in their 20s and stuff, you come up through a school system where you're always asking questions about how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? You're not taught to find resources, right? And then you start reading about personal development stuff, and then you become you learn how to find those answers for yourself.
That's right.
Rather than tell me what to do, it's like, what did you read for that?
That's right.
So learning this as a kid is so fucking useful and fundamental. Totally. I wish I learned all this
100%. And that's part of what I like about Acton too, is we don't answer questions, right? It's if they've got a question, it's okay, where would we find that? Who's doing that? Who's doing that better than anybody? Where can we go, and can we learn anything from them? Do they have a book? Do they have a podcast? Do they have can we go get that answer? Right. And Jakey was talking about, directing. It's like, okay, cool. Well, obviously you got Uncle Chris. He's phenomenal. But I also got, what's that?
I said, right. Yeah. No,
we got Justin Folk too, it was like
using family members is a great example.
Huge. Yeah. Some phenomenal examples, and so, I absolutely 100%. Being an emotional ninja. And so, feelings are not bad things. That is a part of the human condition. We have feelings. We can get angry, we can get upset, we can be happy, we can be, all of those things are valuable. What's not valuable is letting yourself be overly controlled by it and putting some of those feelings up on a pedestal where it's like, you feel like you're entitled to something if you're angrier more often, or you're entitled to something if you're sad more often. And so many people, it's just like they want to tell everybody about how sad they are all the time for something because they want everybody to go, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Or they want, it's just, feelings are valuable, but calm is a superpower. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, and that's one of the things that I love the most about you guys in particular, is I think you guys have really worked on that and harnessed that as humans. I think you guys exhibit that, your ability to just stay relatively neutral. Yeah, I can acknowledge that feelings are there, but I'm going to go ahead and stay calm because it's going to allow me to make a better decision. I'm going to go ahead and detach if I need to detach so I can make a better decision, right? Calm, especially in the midst of chaos, is an absolute superpower. And so again, I've got to exhibit that at home first. If I exhibit that more, they exhibit it as well.
I don't mean to stop at every rule, man, and I'm not going to, but
it's all good.
This one specifically, I wonder, do you notice a difference between men and women in terms of uptaking this specific rule? Because there's this stereotype.
Trying to get my man in trouble.
But there is this idea that, well, women tend to be more in tune with their emotions than men, which also turns into they can exhibit their emotions more than men, with it being okay.
Sure.
Like that's a normal thing. Now, now what you have 3 daughters and 1 son, right?
I have 2 daughters, 1 son.
2 daughters, 1 son. So
right.
what have you noticed about this rule when raising 2 daughters, having a wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I give more leeway there because they will naturally be more emotional. My biggest mistakes early on were twofold. One, trying to fix it immediately and being like, hey, hold on. Calm down. First of all, worst thing you can say, right? Calm down. Here's your answer, right? You're gonna get your dick kicked, and you deserve it. So that's big. Or, that's really it. You got to give them some time, or I wouldn't give them enough time to let them be emotional. Because if you jump in and get emotional with them, that's going to just extend it too. And so, just understand that that's there, appreciate it, cool. Let me know how I can help, and give them a little bit of time and space to get the emotions out, and then they'll calm down relatively quickly thereafter. So not jumping in too quickly is kind of a big thing, because it happens more. Whereas my son, I can just it's a little quicker.
I think it's part of the reason why women are healthier. Like why women live longer.
I agree.
Because they burn through it all quicker,
They do. Or we just we
harbor it.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
we
just going to stuff this in for 20 years and I'll get back to you.
Yeah. And then your fucking heart explodes out of your chest.
Oh, God. Dude, so true. We're kind of stupid. No, I think you're right.
But yeah, just being emotionally intelligent and being able to figure out what to do with a particular feeling. You don't have to always act on it right away or be reactionary.
That's right. And being able to identify it and understanding like, okay, I'm really pissed right now. And so what is it, man? So then we can take a step back and just reflect. So why do you get so mad when your brother does that? If that doesn't really impact you, like what is it about that? And it's like, okay, well, let's be thoughtful about it. And again, that just allows you to be proactive the next time, and or not put yourself in situations where those emotions are going to come, out of control. So just want them to have some emotional intelligence around that, and so that's kind of how we address it.
Your son is raising some hell, is what you're saying.
That boy's, yeah.
He's got a lot of energy.
That boy gets at it, man, for sure. Well, he named Vision Quest. You guys ever see Vision Quest? Yeah. So that's where his name came from. So it's a movie about a high school wrestler in the 80s. Matthew Modine played Loudon Swain.
That's a great movie.
So it's a great movie. I got Frank Jasper, the guy that played Shoot, that he wrestles. I got Frank coming on the podcast in a couple weeks, I think. But yeah, so that's where Loudon's name came from, is from that movie. I played Lunatic Fringe the entire way home from the hospital, the whole way. That's just his jam. So
he's fired up.
Yeah, man, he's lived up to it. So being the hardest worker in the room, that one's relatively self-explanatory, but we don't get into too much of the comparison. That's where, we have to make sure it's like, look, hardest worker in the room just means you are putting forth your best effort all the time, right? You're really comparing to yourself, because if you get stuck in like, okay, well, there's 4 of us in here right now. Am I out working? Andrew and Nsima and Martha. Just that gets to an unhealthy place too. It's just, are you handling your stuff and really putting forth effort to get better?
Calves.
I know he's over. So I'm just like, all right, man, I gotta. So it's like that gets silly. So it's more, it's more of an introspection kind of thing. And the same thing with the next one, right? Be the kindest person in the room. Be the nicest person in the room. Be just conscientious about how you treat other people. The caveat that we talk about there a little bit now, but it doesn't play out too much. I don't harp on it a ton right now, but it will need to later, and I will, especially for my young man, is being nice is not the same thing as getting walked all over and being a pushover, because that's very much, I talk to the young men I get to serve through Apogee about being the savage and the gentleman, like having the ability to do both, and you're not going to get walked over. You should be in that gentleman mode 99% of the time, right? But you should be capable to be the savage where you need to, and you need to be capable of cutting people off if they're, if they need to be cut off, whatever that looks like. But treat people well. If they're somebody that's going to be in your life, you want to have that relationship. No complaining, fix it. It's not worth complaining about almost ever, but if it is, then it's worth finding a solution. We talk about schools all the time with that, right? I was the public school and private school teacher and administrator that was complaining about all the ways that it could have been and should have been. Cool. So what are you going to do about it? So build something else.
That one's a big one.
It's a freaking huge one.
We tend to use the words them and they. Right. They made it this way. That this is this. Well,
that's right.
And it's like, Well, you could probably
So you can do something about that.
You probably look in the mirror and probably find somebody that
you can
might
probably
be able to-
find somebody that can handle that. That's right. But people don't do it because of the fear. You know, it's the normal fears of other people's opinions about it and whatever. And same, when we just moved to North Carolina, right? That pissed a lot of people off. It made a lot of people upset, you know, our family and friends and whatever. I'm like, look, man, I'm not doing it to get away from you. But there were some things that we saw. There were opportunities that were there. There were some things that we saw were issues. We had opportunities that, you know, for us as a family that made a whole lot of sense. And I'm not going to complain about, oh, well, California this, or my tax is this, or my whatever. I actually have a tangible way to fix it. So I need to put my money where my mouth is and pull the trigger.
I like that one especially too because like not like I complained a lot as a kid, but I did remember when I was 21 years old, the first time I heard about just the complaining rule was on the Tim Ferriss podcast. I remember him saying, I don't complain ever. That's just a rule for me. And I was like, it's a fucking good rule. I'm just not going to complain about anything ever again.
It's a great rule.
It is, yeah.
Words matter. You know, they very much do. And so you're training I really believe you're training your subconscious when you're just consistently in that frame of mind, you know, and you'll start to see all the things wrong. You can always find something wrong, but man, you can always find something right too. You know, I think that's just so much more powerful. You know, think because most people won't. We talk a lot about the fact that people live reactively and people live out of fear and people will follow the status quo. We all heard the whole, you know, if your friends all jumped off a bridge, man, would you do it? And we're always like, no. 99% of people are an abso-frickin-lutely yes, they would, for most things, you know. And so we just talk about, look, think and be very intentional about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because most people will not do that. They will just go with the flow. We give credit to Jocko for number 8, right? Discipline equals freedom. And it's that same concept we talked about earlier is, you know, if we know responsibility comes before that freedom, if we have that order correct, we'll always take care of the priorities and the things that need to be done. And that gives us freedom, the ultimate freedom being, you know, a peace of mind that most people don't have. I really think that's a big part of the reason my kids are happier than most kids. I think that's why I'm happier than most people, because there's non-negotiables every day of the things that need to get done, and we're going to get those done. Memento Mori is the one I probably get the most pushback on, because people go, well, you're teaching your kids to have like a fascination with death, and it's a fascination with life, right? It's it's don't forget, man, you've got one day today, that's it, and then this day is gone, is done, and you're one day closer to death. So like, let's make the most of it, kind of deal. Be intentional.
Everything's temporary.
Everything's temporary. This ride ends.
Right.
You know, you are personally responsible, and that's just a reminder that if there's something that needs to be done, you're responsible for getting it done. Whether that's somebody's socks are on the floor, or you know, something's got to get fed on the farm, or something's got to, you know, happen in business. You're always a leader. You're at very least you're a leader of one. So you are always personally responsible. And then the last one is doing the right thing is always the right thing. And you do not negotiate with your integrity ever. You know, and that's a fun conversation with them, because, you know, we talk, like, I'm not always going to be there. Mom's not always going to be there. Sometimes you are by yourself. Sometimes you are with some peers. Sometimes you are. The minute you let yourself negotiate with your integrity, you know, you open up the doors to some pretty slippery slopes that you don't want to go down. So, and every time you avoid sacrificing your integrity, you put some money in the bank right there that you can count on later. So don't sacrifice your integrity.
That handwriting was immaculate, by the way. That's one thing I noticed.
So, man, that's shout out to oh God, I wish I could remember the name of the business that did it. Kelly Steele is her name. So yeah, shout out to Kelly, man, because I sent her over those rules and she whipped it up and put it on our doorstep for us to come grab. Yep, Kelly Steele. Yeah, it's cool, man.
Before the show started, we were talking a little bit about some of these really unfortunate situations that have happened in the last, well, I guess it's been happening for years now, but the last several months there's been more school shootings and things like that. What are some of your thoughts on that? Like, where do you think, you know, some of these things are kind of coming from? And
yeah, it is unfortunate, man. And I'll get the stuff out of the way that makes people mad the most. It's not a gun problem. We've always had guns. We've always had access to guns. Those have always been here. I don't think it is a gun problem or an accessibility to gun problem. I think it is a person problem. I think it's a young man problem. I think our young men are being chopped off at the knees really, really early. They don't have there's a lot of fatherless homes, obviously, but they don't have good male mentors. Adulthood, kind of what we've talked about a little bit earlier. Adulthood is now seen as unattractive, right? Responsibility is now seen as unattractive. They don't aspire to be adults because that's just seen as something that's kind of a drag. And so, they don't have those responsibilities to really look up to. And then we're also putting them in these, they're coming from these broken homes, and then they're going into, obviously the systems that I don't love. That's another one of the side effects of schooling, is that you don't have a voice there as a young person, and you want a voice. Like, you want to be able to just voice your opinions. You want to be able to have some sort of power, some sort of respect, not in a bad way. And so the way you earn it at school is you create cliques, on the outside, and you have this group that can then look down on this group. And it's very much the same way as it happens in prison. They don't have any power. They're being told what to do all day long. It's this system. Shit. They're walking your straight line. We'll tell you when you can do this. We'll tell you when you can do that. Like, if you look at the systems, there's no other system in our country that looks as close to how we operate in schools as prison. Period. And so you create all these weird social hierarchies and all these things that kind of take place, right? And so that's where you get a lot of the bullying comes in, and you've got all of those things. Of course, it's more, it's multifaceted. So you have all that, but then we're taking our young men and we're medicating them, really, really early as well. And we're telling them something's wrong with them. And that's one thing that doesn't get talked about enough. I think all of these mass shootings, these guys are usually on prescription medications, I would say, in almost 100% of the cases that I'm aware. They're on some of these prescription meds, and they have been for a long time, And so I think all of those things are playing into it. Yeah, media, culture, of course, there's a lot of negative influences there, but we are failing our young guys early.
You think video games play a factor in there?
I don't think they play a factor the way a lot of people will look at it and say video games desensitize people to killing, right? Because you're used to doing all this, and it's desensitized. I don't know that there's really clear evidence for that necessarily being the case. What I don't love about video games is that it desensitizes them to life, especially our young guys. I think it's a sneaky thing for our young guys, because I think the DNA of a young man is he wants to be strong, he wants to be brave, he wants to conquer, he wants to achieve, he wants to go, he wants to get the girl, he wants to, right? And you guys know, like, you have that kind of innate desire, right? It's part of our DNA. And I think the sneaky thing about video games for our young guys is they can start to check off those boxes subconsciously without actually doing shit. They don't actually do anything. Whereas we had, back in our day, whatever, but we had to go actually fight the fight and win or lose. I had to go actually ask the girl out and have her say yes or no. I had to actually go, I'm gonna, whatever. Like, you actually had to do it and experience it and earn that victory. It checks off that box because you're like, yes, I leveled up. Ooh, I went and saved this. Ooh, I beat that. Ooh. And then the rest of the world kind of gets toned down, and you're like, I've already checked that off. And so you're not as driven to actually go do those things. I think that's a more dangerous spot for our young guys. With video games.
Yeah, I would, as somebody who loves video games,
and I know you're a gamer,
and still will play them. I've gotten a good grasp on it now, but you're absolutely right. And like, the point that I was going to make was, like, for myself, like, I loved sports growing up. Like, I watched them every freaking day. Like, we didn't watch like cartoons in the house. We watched Sports Center. We watched every single sport. Yeah. What happened was the kids got way bigger and stronger than me. So that was really freaking hard. What was really easy was, I'll just create my guy on NBA Live. Like, dude, that guy's fucking dope. So you're right. I actually did get that, like, check that box off. And it sucked because, like, well, I'm really, really good over here and I'm terrible over here. I'm going to lean into what I'm good at. It kind of reminds me of, like, the thing that we talk about with porn addiction, or just porn in general. Yeah. Like, people are getting that fix there. And then when it comes to the real life thing, they're just like,
it's not that cool. Not that exciting.
Like, I already got something better over here because, like, she doesn't say no. Or, you know what I mean? I don't even have to try.
You don't have to try?
You don't have to try it. It just like you said it perfectly, it desensitizes life.
It's exactly it, man. Yeah. And all of a sudden, this whole metaverse, whatever, just becomes far more attractive because I can get everything I want without any kind of effort.
And you
know?
can become that superhero avatar. You know, you don't just play the guy on the screen, you become that person.
Yep. So I think it simultaneously checks off those boxes, but then there's got to be something there too where you also know that it's bullshit and you're not actually doing something too, you know. And so I think that creates an internal conflict. And I'm not smart enough to know what that looks like from a psychological standpoint, but, you know, just anecdotally from working with thousands and thousands of young people, I think it's that, you know, it's like checks that off. Plus I know I'm not actually doing anything. And so it just kind of creates this cycle of not good, you know, it's not a good emotional state.
You know, we diverted from the shooting thing, but this is very interesting because we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation with what I learned in school. The world is very different. You can do a lot of different things nowadays, right? You can do a lot of things with video games. When I was younger, I played a lot, I gamed a lot. You know, and it was a bad hole because it's not like I wasn't making money with it. I spent like thousands of hours on certain games though. And I had to stop playing multiplayer games at a certain point because I was like, if I want to be good in life, I have to quit. So I quit right before college and deleted certain accounts, and I was so sad. But nowadays, you have like hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands of people who are making money, like not just little bit amounts of money. It's just streaming a game that they like for people to watch them play.
For sure.
So it makes me wonder, you know, with kids, you know, you have all these kids that are like seeing all these different ways to do well in life. And there must be some of them who are like, damn, them YouTubers are making, Twitch streamers are making some money on Call of Duty. So how do you rectify that for those kids?
You bet, man. And that is a tough thing because you're right. There are some people that are just there are some people that are doing some things with that, with the YouTube, with the video games, with all that stuff. And that's great. And if a young person thinks that that's where he or she wants to go, I want to see evidence of, cool, what are you doing to be intentional about growing there then? What are you doing about being intentional about where do you make the money in these? Is it through sponsorships? Is it through subscribers, through Twitch or whatever it is? Is it through, like, where do you actually do that? And then what goals are you setting for those specific metrics, the business side of it?
I got to play for 4 hours a day to get good.
Right. Right. Exactly.
I'm working right now.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm researching.
But it's, you know, to get good at fucking Overwatch or one of these games, you got to practice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. But I mean, what is the intent? I mean, really? So like, if you're going to do that, I want specific goals around that. Don't let other responsibilities slide. Don't let the real world slide. And then I want some intentional goals around that as well, and some time frames, and go, man, I'm going to get to this part. I'm going to have, you know, I'm going to reach out, even if it's like, I'm going to reach out and I'm going to get conversations with these guys that are making money around this, and I'm going to sit down and have conversations. If I want to see some intentionality around actually moving that direction, other than I'm just playing just to play, because you don't have the fit, you know, even if you're just playing basketball just to play or doing jiu-jitsu just to do it, there's you know, the physicality that comes into that. You know, there's other benefits that are there too. You don't have that there. So I want to see those other goals without sacrificing other things too, right? Responsibilities still need to get checked off, but it's tough. Yeah, it's a different opportunity.
If you could make some small changes to every school in the United States, like what would they be? Like, do you think that school goes on for too many years? Do you think it's too structured? Like, where do you think, like, what are maybe the 2 or 3 like main things where you're like, I would love for this? Because I thought the pandemic, I was like, this is going to be great. When people go back to school, they'll start thinking of some different ways to run school. Because I thought a lot of it was like just,
and that's because you're a nice person and you want to believe that. You know, the government has any desire to do anything other than what it's doing right now, because it doesn't, and it's only going to get more narrow on their requirements, only going to get more narrow on and lasered in on certain agendas to just rile people up. All of that is contentious. It's a systemic issue that is not going away. Government schools, the way it is, it's not going away. It'll not change. Period. End of story. So if I could wave the magic wand though and get it, I'd get rid of subjects. Life doesn't work in subjects. I would get rid of subjects. I would make everything project based versus academic focused. I would do away with credentialing programs. altogether. And
That's the first question you get asked all the time. Are these credits going to count?
Are these? Oh my gosh, all of it. I would do away with all of that. I would do away with teacher training around getting your teaching credentials. I would do away with all of that. You would have to, as far as the humans coming in, I want them to. It's more of a personal development kind of mindset. I'm looking for that kind of DNA, not somebody that can follow directions and perpetuate a system. Get rid of subjects, get rid of all the whole credentialing platforms and the grades and all that kind of stuff. And then get rid of the you can only work with your same data manufacturer, as far as the people you deal with, right? Like the interage activity matters. Everybody collaborating together. And if you're 15, great. You're going to sometimes be doing some things with some 6-year-olds. And sometimes you're also going to be doing some things with 25-year-old, teachers. You guys are all working together kind of stuff. I would get rid of all of the age segregation too.
That age segregation thing's actually quite interesting. When I first heard you talk about it when you came on the podcast last year, I was like, whoa, 6-year-olds are working with 16-year-olds. But look at that dynamic right here. You're 45, right?
That's right.
You're 36?
37.
I'm 29.
You're
like,
right.
If we rewind the clock, when I was 6,
exactly,
you were fucking, what?
I don't know. You're the
17
math guy.
and you were
don't look at me.
in your 20s.
I'm helping Nsima tie his shoes.
right? So that in and of itself, because when you go into normal jobs and you have people in certain positions of power, sometimes they're not as intelligent as some of the younger individuals.
Of course.
And they will, because of the age gap, they will treat the younger person like shit because they're not used to working with people that are younger with them. They automatically do that. But you're teaching people how to treat each other with respect despite age.
Despite age. And to try to understand the background. So when I work with companies in the Fortune 500s, we talk a lot about the generational gap. And we talk about the fact that every generation goes, well, my generation's got it figured out. We are doing things the way it should be, right? You older guys are freaking living in the past. You got great chest hair and that's fantastic, but you guys are living way in the past. The younger people, younger than me, they're ruining the world, right? Every generation does that. What they should be doing is going, okay, well, we grew up in this certain time where this was what was normal. This is what was culturally expected. This is what people believed. And so that's part of the reason that I believe the way I believe. It's part of the reason that it's part of the reason that I want somebody to come in and have the conversation face to face when you want to just text about it and you think that's okay. Well, who says either one of them are wrong? But you each have a preference and you automatically are pissed at the other one because they want to do something that you don't want to do. So let's have an understanding around that. So those generational differences are strange. So if you're more used to working real time with people in those, you can have those conversations more readily without being automatically me versus you.
Does that help prevent kids from like clicking up at Acton?
Big time. Yeah, big time. Of course, you're gonna have people that you're closer with, but big time. You see the older kids too soften up a little bit, right? Because they're responsible for taking care of somebody younger or teaching them or imparting something on them. And you'll see them soften up, and you'll see the youngers, want to be more mature. They'll want to take on more responsibility because they want to earn their stripes with the olders too. And so it's that social dynamic is cool to see.
What about this idea of like there's many children in the United States that would go hungry if it wasn't for school? I've heard people mention that before because they get like a free lunch at school.
Free lunches, man. Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. And again, I'm all for the good people that are working in our school systems. My problem is always with the system. It is not with the people, because the majority of teachers and administrators are phenomenal freaking humans, man. And I love them. And you're right. That's a huge part. I mean, I worked at those schools before where they were getting free breakfast and free lunch. There was no, and sometimes they were getting stuff to take home over the weekends too, because otherwise they weren't going to have anything, and I think that's great. I don't think that we need school for, take a look and go, okay, well, how much money are we spending on this? Can we do something else to still help those communities? I don't think we need to put them in a prison-like situation to feed them. But yeah, it is. I mean, that's a huge help.
This is one thing I've been kind of curious about, because like Acton is amazing. But obviously, good things come with a certain price. There's a reason why, a lot of kids have to go to public school.
Yes, sir.
There's single family households.
Yes,
there
sir.
are families that have two parents but they have certain economic issues where it's not an option. So I wonder, number one, I think I hear, and you've talked a lot about other Acton schools spreading. So if this becomes more popular, maybe I don't know if it does become less expensive. I don't know about that. But how can parents impart some of these ideas if they have to put their kid through the typical system because maybe they don't have the other option?
Yeah, that's a really good question, man. And just to touch on that first part, as a network, I was just in Austin, last month maybe, and was meeting with owners from around the world. As a network, we're doing everything we can to really drive the cost as a business owner, the cost per student, the cost per hero. We want to drive that down as far as we can, because if we can drive that down, it just gives us more opportunities for things like scholarships. It gives more opportunities for, being able to, talk to your various communities, because we have parents even at ours that are like, hey, we'll pay somebody else's tuition right now if we can. If there's somebody that needs to come, like we'll gladly do that. Well, shoot, if we can drive the cost per student, down super far, there's ways to do that. There's companies, one of our Actons just partnered with, I don't know if it's, I think it's Black Rifle Coffee, right? And Black Rifle's hooking them up, and there's, we've got Kind Foundation. Kind Foundation is taking in, scholarships or donations and scholarshiping kids. We've got the Apogee Strong Foundation now, right? So if people donate through Apogee Strong, 501c3, tax write-off, and we'll pay for students either go through an Apogee program or go through an Acton Academy. So you do have more and more of those conversations happening to make it more accessible. We understand the hardest part of any kind of privatized education is that there's a cost for privatized ed. Yeah. We know that's always going to be a huge barrier. So we need to do our part to make sure it's accessible to everybody. So you're 100% right on that. But the next part, is you've got to be into, and I actually had a good conversation with Seth Godin. You know Seth Godin?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So Seth is freaking phenomenal. He's a huge supporter of Acton, which is rad. But I've had some conversations with him, and we had a conversation around the fact that he is not, he wrote Stop Stealing Dreams, which was this manifesto that I read in the parking lot of a school that I was running, that I literally read the entire thing before I went home, went through it in the parking lot. And then the next day I told them, hey, I got to go start my own thing. Wow. Right? Like, it was like, I was already there, but I credit Seth's book of being like, kind of that last, like, dude, get on, like, go do it, but he had his kids in a conveyor belt school, and he's not for it. His kid? At all. He had his kids doing, okay. And he's not for it. Like, he's not a believer in it. But he said, look, it really came down, for us, it came down to who are we going to be as a family? And it was kind of like going back to those rules. They had some very specific values that they were imparting, and they had very specific game plan for going into those conveyor belt schools. Well, look, we know what's not right about it. So let's be intentional about understanding that this is a weird thing you're only going to experience here, but what can you learn from it, and how can you help other people while you're there, right? So he's having those conversations with his kids. So they were going in going, I'm playing a game. Right? And so some of this is not going to be useful, but I need to make sure I'm not getting any bad habits out of this too. And how can I actually be helpful to other people, and what kind of relationships can I, and I remember Patrick Bet-David, saying that to me too. He was like, hey, when my kid goes to college, cool, man, great, go to college, be intentional about who you're making relationships with. I don't give a shit if you get D's throughout the whole thing, you just get it, I don't care. Who can you make those relationships with? Who are those ninjas that are working really hard and really, really intelligent, and they're well connected, and how can you connect with them? Like, make it your own game. Seth said that same thing. So that's what I would say to parents too, is you just have to be intentional about those conversations. You're holding all of those specific boundaries at home, and then be intentional about letting them know, look, you're playing a game, and here's how to play it well, and let's make sure we can get the most out of it.
I think an aspect to that too, I'm not a parent, but I think about like maybe what my mom was seeing when I started doing things that weren't so normal, because I did go to college for a period of time, but I left and didn't tell her for a little bit because I just wanted to start doing my own thing. And then she saw that it actually started doing well. So then she was like, oh, you can be successful outside of not going to college. Sure. So it took her a while to like maybe understand that. So for any parents that are listening to this podcast, there might be an aspect where like you went through a certain level of schooling and you saw how things were done. But nowadays there is a lot of other possibility that your kids they have a different level of ability in this world. And the way they can navigate this world isn't necessarily taught in school. So
that's right. Well, it's almost inherently taught. They're almost pushed the other way.
Yes.
And so there are other options. There are other opportunities to pay attention to. And you've got to just be careful, because their parents, when they want their kids to go to college, they're just doing it out of love. They're doing it out of, they just want the best for their young person. Mm-hmm. What they've got to start to then go back in and start to really dive in and think about is, well, what does that mean? I want the best for my young hero. What is the best? Is college the best? Because there's a lot of people that are coming out of college. I mean, what is it now? We're in July of 2022. It wasn't too long. I mean, a few months ago, where I saw something where there were still like 30% of 2020 college grads that didn't have a job, and they had a whole lot of debt, right? And so you have all of these other issues that are playing out. There's a massive ability to make money and get jobs in other ways. There's more 6-figure jobs available right now that don't require a degree than those that do. I mean, there's, you got college alternatives like Praxis, where you can do a 1-year program versus a 4-year program. You automatically debt-free versus usually a lot of debt. And 96% of them roll right into a job paying $50,000 or more, a year out of school, right? You've got all of these different alternatives. So really being intentional about thinking through that, and again, not just think, because most people won't. Most people just automatically, everybody says go to college. So it's an emotional decision we make versus stepping back and going, wait a second, there's a lot of options here. Mm-hmm. And there's some good ones. I
think school is just way too long. 5 to 16, sure. And then or 5 to 18, and then you don't know what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. At that age, because school didn't really allow you to grow,
to try anything,
and to think about it, and to think about exactly what you wanted to do. Correct. And to maybe fail a couple times and mess up
yes, sir,
an internship or a job, right?
Yep.
And then you go to 4 more years of school.
Yep.
Or you get like a master's degree.
Yeah.
And I think
guilty.
I think people should maybe just think a little bit outside the box. I mean, there's not much we can do in terms of the traditional schooling other than to pull our kids out and to teach them ourselves, or to get them enrolled in some different kind of education. Those seem like really viable options. Mm-hmm. But in terms of college, like, what's the minimum effective dosage of it? Like, how much do you need? Like, what is it that you want to do?
Well, I asked a group of college professors that I was speaking to not very long ago. I said, well, students that come to your class, what do they get from you that they can't get anywhere else? Like, it's worth paying that money because they have to come to you. Otherwise, they're not going to get it anywhere else. They can't go to any other school, or they can't go online and get it, maybe even for free. Mm-hmm. Well, they need the degree because some jobs want it. That was the overall consensus.
Right.
So if that's true, and again, they've got individual experiences that they can impart, and that's great. I think those are valuable, but you can also get the individual experience. I learned from every time I talk to you, I learn something, right? So if that's true, well, then what are we doing? Mm-hmm. Right? If that's true, what are we doing? So what is the value of that? Do you really want an education, or do you want to follow the status quo and get schooled? I ask parents, like, okay, how much are you going to spend on that tuition? That's going to be $100,000 for 4 years. Cool. So you could take that $100,000 and go buy that young person a business and have them run a business that's for sale right now for $100,000.
And the kid could still go to school potentially. He could take some classes.
You could always do that later if you wanted to do it. Talk about the education you'll get from running a business. So are you actually looking for education, or are you looking for conformity? Because you're looking for school. So what's the minimum dose? Well, it depends. What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Because some of those classes are going to be useless. Even if you want to be, what about the doctors? Great. Yes, you have to do it legally. You got to go, and you got to go pre-med. First of all, that's a really small percentage of your college graduates. So using that as the why everybody should go to college is stupid. But yes, do they need it? You bet. Do they also need, if they know that I'm going, man, that is where I'm going, do they also need to take 1950s women's liberal, like they take all these extra courses for an extra $150,000 too, so it's a game, it really is. So what's the minimum dose? For most people, it's pretty close to zero if they want an education.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, one of our employees here, Owen, I think he's still like around 20, right?
Yeah, I think he's 19.
Yeah, he's either 12 or 21. I'm not sure. He's somewhere there. Yeah.
It's awesome.
He's super young. He went away to school, and then the pandemic happened, and his school shut down, and so he came back. And he's a kid from a very young age, had a job, but while he was working here, I asked him, I was like, "What do you think you're going to go back to school, or like, what are your thoughts?" He's like, "No," he's like, "This is like pretty much exactly what I want to be doing for at least a while." And he's like, "I want to learn more stuff here." And he's like, and then I'll just kind of take it from there. But he's learning so much here. He's one of our videographers.
It's awesome.
He's learning how to do stuff for YouTube and for TikTok and all kinds of stuff. And that trade now that he has, he can go and utilize that anywhere he wants.
Go anywhere he wants to go. And so imagine if that's what high school looked like, right? It was more experiential, talking about things we can get rid of in regular school, things you should really implement is that's what it should be, experience-based. Internships and apprenticeships should be the status quo. We have the Apogee Strong mentorship program. And so we've got these young men from all over the world, and you got to chat with those guys, and I got to bring you guys on too and have you guys have the conversations with these guys. But it was kind of cool seeing about 6 months ago, I had 2 of them reach out to me within the span of maybe about 2 weeks. One of them was a 19-year-old young man at a pretty prominent university right now. The other one is a 15-year-old young man. They both reach out to me. One of them, the 19-year-old's like, "Hey, I have a resume right now. Would you mind looking at my resume? Because I'm applying to a bunch of jobs in the financial services industry, and I can't get anybody to call me back. I'm not getting anything, as I want to see if there's something I can do on my resume to really spice it up. I'm getting good grades at this prominent university. Will you take a look at this for me?" The 15-year-old reaches out to me. One of the projects they take on is they do a series of interviews, and then they learn to go get an apprenticeship. Right? He actually went and did the interviews and went and got the apprenticeship. This guy skipped. He didn't do that part at all. So the 15-year-old did this apprenticeship, and he ended up doing it for a guy that runs Factum Financial, some sort of financial services thing. And as he continued to go through the program, that guy reached back out to him and was like, "Hey, man, I love what you're doing. Show me that portfolio of all the work and all the projects you're taking on." He's taking on all these projects that have nothing to do with finance, just has everything to do with personal responsibility and learning all these skills and communicating and doing all. He's like, "I'll tell you what, I will pay you under the table right now to come work for me. Here's the only caveat. If you will come work for me for the next 2 years, and I will pay you under the table because I can't legally pay you yet. When you're 18, I will also pay for you to get, a certain number of licenses. But if I'm going to do all that, I just want you to stay with me for 3 years, and you can take that and go wherever you want to go. But I want you to do that." He's like, "Cool, awesome." This guy's 19, going the traditional route. I've got great grades at this university. I can't get a bite, And I think that represents a lot of the opportunity that we're missing, especially for our young people. If if a 15-year-old came from Acton or anywhere else, but if a 15-year-old reached out to you guys and was like, "Hey, look, I love what you do here on the Power Project. I love this. I need to come work for you guys. I will come work for you guys for free. You can just have me do anything you want. I just want to be around, learn by osmosis, take on as much responsibility as you'll give me." And they come in and they know what you guys are about, and they know the vibe of this whole place. That's a way different proposition than if a gray-haired, gray-bearded 42-year-old came in and was like, said the same thing. You're like, okay, not as attractive. If he's 15, you're like, dude, that's badass. Let's go.
Yeah.
They need to take advantage of that. And we would do that as business owners too. I think that's a huge opportunity we're missing for these guys.
Do you think we start school too early?
God.
Like there's no reason to be at school when you're 5, right?
Yeah, and if both parents are working and you want to go into an environment, it needs to be a play-based kind of environment where they can like that's great, go get it. But do we need to start that early? No. Should we be starting academics that early? Big no, giant no,
maybe
a hell no.
8 or 10.
Yeah. I mean, you go into some of those. Look at Finland. They don't start until they're around 7, and even then, it's more social emotional. Right, than anything else. It's like learning to play well, treat each other well, tie your shoes, manners, being kind. It's the social emotional stuff. They don't really start in on the academics until they're closer to 10, and then they're done at 16, and they kick our ass in every metric. And of course it's more nuanced than that. There's more factors that go into that, but part of those factors are the fact that they are going developmentally correctly for what young people are ready for. That's really.
Do you think we should be able to enter the workplace much earlier as well?
You bet. I think child labor gets a bad rap, and because we think
cheap child
labor, because we think sweatshops. We think all the bad circumstances, and we think all of that kind of stuff. You bet. I think we should be able to enter the workforce as early as we feel like entering the workforce. Entrepreneurs will do that anyways, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like my kids have businesses. My kids make good money, and I know a lot of young people that do as well. But I think we should be able to enter it much earlier if we can handle the responsibilities. You bet. I think we'd change as a society for the better.
Your kid's like, I helped contribute to pay the mortgage, so I'm going to leave my socks over
So
there.
I'm going to put my socks right here.
This is my corner of the house.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it.
What about trade schools?
So we're missing a huge opportunity, man. Not promoting that. We're missing a huge. And when I say there's the 6-figure jobs, there's more available, that don't require a degree than do. Many of those are in the trades, and my clients will tell they can't get people. They can't find people. They are begging people. They are paying people to go through and get your, you're getting paid to go through and get your licensing around this kind of stuff. You're not even having to pay to go to these trade schools a lot of times. They are paying you to, to learn the skill. I mean, it's a huge opportunity. One of the most fun things, we bring students into, to Acton, or bring people into Acton and talk to the heroes, or we'll bring people in and talk to the Apogee Strong guys. One of my favorite things, I have my friend who works for SMUD. Over here, he's a lineman for SMUD. He doesn't even have a high school diploma. Doesn't have a high school diploma. He makes $300,000 a year at SMUD as a lineman.
Damn.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah, go climb some poles.
Go climb some poles.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, it's a huge opportunity, and we have just culturally been trained to go, less than. College is where it's at.
Yeah.
What the
I remember like when I was, because like I feel like I graduated in 2003. I feel like that was like the last, I mean, maybe we all feel this way, but I feel like that was like the last graduating class that thought that college was the only answer. Because after that, I feel like everyone was like, well, maybe not. But the trade school, so like back then, what's the automotive one? UTI?
Yep.
Okay, so that one had just barely opened up in Sacramento. And it's funny, it is called UTI in Nsima.
really
We're
need to change
children.
Yeah.
But I remember UTI was for the kids that didn't get into college. They're just like, well, we're just going to go over here and, kind of work on like an assembly line or something.
Right.
And in my head, I was just like, well, you're probably going to be making more money faster than anybody that goes to school.
Yeah.
But one of the things was it was pretty expensive to still go. It was still like $80,000 or something for like an entire education from there. So that's interesting that
they were also running things. I don't know if they're even around anymore.
I don't know.
think they were running some sort of, I don't think they were running things very well.
Yeah, because they were like guaranteeing like employment afterwards, but they didn't like specify, or it was kind of like there was like no time frame on it is what I remember.
But you're right, man. I mean, we're missing out on those. And even if it is $80,000, okay, $80,000. I mean, I talked to somebody yesterday who just finished paying $250,000 for their kids. They went to USC. And it was $250K on the tuition that they ended up paying for tuition, room, and board. Like, what the? And the kid came out and was like, I think I want to be a firefighter because I don't have anything. It's like, cool, man, that's awesome. What if you had found that out earlier and saved $250,000?
$80K though to learn a trade. Like you have a trade.
You've got something that you can.
You got something very tangible.
Something very, very tangible. And one of my favorite experiences from when I was traveling and speaking a lot was I was on a private jet I was on his jet. He owned a bunch of community banks in the Midwest, and his family had always owned those. And we were going back and forth, taking this jet all over the Midwest and doing multiple keynotes, and I was doing 2 a day for like an entire week. And we were going to all his different branches. And the last trip back, he's crying in the jet because he doesn't like his life. He's just, not crying like he's some sort of baby. He was just breaking down. He wasn't happy. He'd always had all of this stuff handed to him. And he was told, you're going to take over this bank and you're going to do this. And he was a good guy and he was doing good things, but he was upset about his life. He wasn't fulfilled. We're on his jet, not fulfilled. He's in his 50s probably. We end up landing, and he goes to go get cleaned up, and I end up getting into a conversation with this guy who was working in the little private airfield. He was 40 years old. He had come out of high school and immediately he learned to work on planes, and so he ended up working on all of these private planes. He was 40, and he was telling me this was his last week of work, and I was like, "You're moving on to something else?" Like, I'm retiring, man. I am done. He'd been working for 22 years. He'd just been very, very smart, made really good money working on these planes, and used that to buy some real estate. And he was just going to go like fishing in Montana or something. Like he was done. He's like, yeah, I'm good, man. I've got enough cash flow right now. I don't ever need to work again. And I could not be happier. I've loved this entire thing. I'm just in here working on these planes and fixing problems. And I've been able to do it since I was 18. I'm good to go. So one guy had all of this and went to college and did all the degree route that he was supposed to do. And again, it comes back to what your definition of success is. But if you don't have that freedom of the peace of mind with what you're doing, then I don't envy you ever.
There's one thing that you're mentioning where like these kids, they'll have maybe not debate, but they'll have conversations and bring about evidence and learn how to have respectful disagreement. Because if there's anything that I've noticed, I notice it that when typical education doesn't necessarily teach that, especially colleges, it's like you're taught what to think,
right?
But you're not necessarily, quite a few people I know don't analyze why they think what they think.
Right.
They'll have like an idea of this is the truth, this is the truth, this is the truth. And even when evidence is brought that may show that that is not true, instead of coming at it with some logic and trying to understand the evidence, there's emotion-based thinking, especially when it comes to political things and world things. You see it in Instagram comments, but I've seen it so much with people, and it's like very difficult to have conversations, difficult ones. And I think that's such a great thing that the kids within these schools are being taught, because it'll teach them how to be critical thinking adults.
Yeah, I'll actually be able to just think in general and not just like you said. It's the battle of the most emotional, right? Who can play the victim card the loudest and the longest, and you win. We'll all bow down. Civil discourse is a need, and is part of that is a systemic issue, because you learn to play a game where you're having to appease whoever the master is, and you understand what their point of view is, and you understand that failure, oh my gosh, school teaches you failure is not an option. Do not fail. Don't fail. Whereas life rewards that if you figure out what you failed, how you did it, and you got resilient, and you turn around and you do something better, life will reward that. You can learn from that. School says don't fail at all costs. Do not fail. Yeah. And the surefire way not to fail is if, okay, Andrew is my teacher and he is saying this, doesn't matter if I agree with him or not. That's what I have to write my paper on this, and because that's how I'm going to get my good grade, and that's how I'm going to, So you're just these habits that you start to build of where I'm going to acquiesce and just go down one train of thought, and it's a dangerous spot. So yeah, civil discourse is a need. That's why we did the No Safe Spaces film, and kind of talked about the eradication of civil discourse at the college campuses. And when we put that movie out, and Dave Rubin flew out here, and we put on an event with Acton, kids, and Dave spoke and I spoke, and we had the Acton heroes go up and show what that looked like. They actually went up and they did, they had debates around gun control, and they had debates around abortion, and they had debates around mandatory vaccinations. And this was in like 2018. And so they had debates around all of these things, and they all decided they were going to go in and take the opposite position of what they really felt. And they were going to argue from that side. Like, what a great experience and thought exercise. And of course, social media wouldn't let us promote it, but we got shut down in all kinds of ways because Dave was coming, and we were talking about these hot button topics. And so, but yeah, man, it's so important.
There's a lot of parents I run into, they don't know what their kid, they don't know what their kid's going to do. Like their kid is between 18 and 25 or something like that. And their parents are real nervous and worried that the kid's not going to find their thing. Or what are some of your suggestions when it comes to situations like that? For me personally, I always just think it's kind of silly, because I'm like, I'm still trying to figure things out. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Bingo. That's the key right there, is them for almost all of them. I guarantee if they look in themselves too, what are you doing? What are you going to be when you grow up? What problems are you solving? Do you love what you're doing right now? Do you love your life right now? Because if you don't, you've got work to do as well. What did you guys learn today? I hate that freaking question. What did you learn today, adult? What were you intentional about growing in today? Right? It's like we just feel like we got to this point where we stop as the adult and then just expect the young person. And again, that young person, if they've gone through that conveyor belt schools, they have no idea. They haven't had the experience to know. And I use the example of kind of the buffet sort of thing. If they've only had for 12 years 5 different foods, and you're asking them, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite food? All they can tell you is one of those 5 because they don't know anything. And you're like, there's all these other foods out there. Okay, well, they haven't gotten to freaking try them, right? So that's why I get those experiences in it. And 18, if you've gone through those conveyor belt schools, a lot of times now, 18 to 25, that's when you should go out and start collecting those experiences. It just is, right? You're not it's not culturally right now. 18 used to be like, hey, it's time to get married and start knocking out some kids. And we've got, but you've also, at that point, you were also an apprentice underneath the blacksmith for the last 5 or 6 years, and you were taking on that apprenticeship and you were providing value and you were doing those things. Well, if we're not doing that for them, then we've got to give a little leeway on that back end to take the next 6-7 years and just go try things. I mean, that's going to be the time now where they should go have multiple jobs, try that side gig, go have a job that, you think you might be interested in, and you can make some cash and you can take some responsibility, and then come home and let's see your goals around freaking playing your video game or whatever and building out your YouTube. And great, man, do them both. And that's what they should be doing at that age. I mean, collect as many experiences, take on as much responsibility as you can. That's the only way you're going to gain self-awareness ever.
How can people find out more about your schools?
Check out actonacademy.org, ACTON, and you can do a search finder there. We got about 300 locations now, 41 states and 26 countries or something like that.
You're a busy guy.
So we're rocking, man. Yeah, we're rocking. So it's great, man. So you can go there and see if there's one near you. If there's not one near you, then you can always reach out to me. Just either, reach out Matt at Apogee Strong or reach out to me through IG, and I'll help you figure out how to launch one if you want to launch one. And then Apogee Strong is the mentorship program with Tim, and we got a few more verticals launching on that too. So glad to help.
Thank you so much. Andrew, take us on out of here.
Sure thing. And just before I forget, my son's 1.5 right now. So
that's awesome.
He's going to, his first day of school is going to be at Acton. I can't wait.
Man.
I mean, hopefully he's into it and stuff, but we'll see how that goes. Hopefully I won't be one of those parents that's like, no, you're going to go to this school. And then he's just not into it. You have to have that conversation with me.
We'll have to.
But no, I'm excited. I was just texting my wife like, dude, like this is going to be so cool for him.
That's awesome,
So
man.
I'm really looking forward to it. All right. But thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. Please hit that like button and drop us a comment down below on anything you found interesting about today's episode, and subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already. Please follow the podcast at MB Power Project on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. My Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where you at?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. And check out the Discord. Links in the description. It's going strong. Where can people find you, Matt? Actually, I think you just stole them, but where can they find you again?
Yeah, that's the best place, man. IG is the best place, just at Matt Beaudreau. But you can check us out also at apogeestrong.com. See the mentorship program and all the new verticals are launching there. And we're on IG at Apogee Program.
A lot of E's and U's and X's in there.
I know. I mess it up myself. I don't think I say any of it right. I barely ever spell it right. But again, hey, I'm the educator. That's right. I know.
When you were speaking, I just kept looking at your name over and over again, and I'm like, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
There's like,
there is a pattern though.
yeah, there's a pattern to
There
it.
is. Yeah. So it's the EAU and the EAU. So that actually makes it pretty easy. So it's not bad. Yeah.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.